Welcome to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we celebrate our favorite movies. My name is Kevin, and I'd like to welcome you to Couch Potato Theater John Wick. We are celebrating the 10th anniversary of John Wick. Can't believe 10 years have gone by, but we've gotten 4 great films out of it, and we're going to be talking about the original one that started it all. My name is Kevin. I'd like to welcome my guest here to the Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, with me, as always, is my co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What is going on, buddy?
People keep asking me if I'm back. Well, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back to talk John Wick. How are you doing, Kevin?
Good to have you. You sound excited. I like the energy. That's good. That's good. Cool. All right. Well, we need to have the queen of movie food join us for this one because she's a big action fan. And, of course, our co-host, of course, of Time Warp here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'd like to welcome Miss Lady Adderhold. What's going on, Lacey?
Not a whole lot. How you doing?
Doing good. You ready? You ready for some action pants, Lacey pants?
Absolutely. 100%. Yay.
Now, I'm really excited for our guest here, the original co-founder with us here on the Fandom Podcast Network, my original co-host of Blooded Kings, our Highlander podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'd like to welcome Mr. Norman Lau. What's up, buddy?
You know, I'm so excited to be in this conversation. You know why? Because this conversation is going to be priceless. Priceless.
I do have a quick question for Norman. Norman, did your Omni bring you into this podcast, and is it on red or green?
It's right now. I would probably say it's red, but it'll probably be green at the end of this episode. I don't know. That's a good question.
We are crossing the streams here. I love it.
we're just talking about John Wick in 10 years post John Wick. The John Wick effect has been tremendous in the world of entertainment and fashion, and I'm sure gun sales too.
It is. Yeah, we're gonna touch on all of that there. Of course, this is the 10th anniversary of John Wick. They've recently celebrated this in theaters. I think they showed them November 3rd and 4th for a few nights. I unfortunately could not go because I was in Australia, but they did have a limited re-release on these here, and the stars came out there. There's a picture of Mr. Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski, the director, of course, and star of all the John Wicks. And we've been through a lot here, guys, here celebrating John Wick. And did want to give a little shout out to a lot of the fun shows for Couch Potato Theater we've done recently. Of course, we did the 35th anniversary of Roadhouse with our friend of the network and Highlander alumni, Mr. Anthony DeLongis was on as a guest, as he's a co-star, of course, of Couch Potato Theater. We discussed The Losers, The Mummy, Rad. We did Deadpool month. We did 1 and 2. And we're, of course, celebrating some time travel with Edge of Tomorrow, also celebrating its anniversary. And we also discussed True Lies. You guys, we're going to be talking 4K releases of James Cameron months coming up here. And we did Spinal Tap. We have Abyss coming up as well. We just dropped Terminator. Coming up, too, is Aliens, including the Aliens expanded documentary that was released this year. And coming up soon, we have Couch Potato Theater for Johnny Dangerously, celebrating its 40th anniversary. We'll also be celebrating Christmas. This was Lacey's pick. I love this pick. The Long Kiss Goodnight.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, of course, we're going to have, I don't know what we're calling it, Kyle, an instant Couch Potato Theater. We're going to be talking about Couch Potato Theater, Deadpool and Wolverine, right?
Yeah, Instant Potato.
Instant Potato. And next year, we're going to be celebrating the 1980s canon films retrospective.
Wow.
We've picked several 80s canon action films that we're going to be doing Couch Potato Theaters on. And if you want in on one of those, Norman, let us know. We're going to be talking about American Ninja, Invasion USA, Cobra, Bloodsport.
Can I do a small thing for you? Can I do a small interpretation for you of canon?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Firewalker and Masters of the Universe. I have to see if we can get Anthony on for that one.
Oh, you know he would. You know he would.
So, yeah, we're having a lot of fun here in Couch Potato Theater Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, we are celebrating John Wick. 10 years. Can't believe it's been 10 years. But we got a lot to cover here, guys. Let's go ahead and get into the first discussion here. Let's get some movie time. So one of the fun things we like to do, first of all, is do the IMDb possibly vague and not always spot on plot description here. Let's see what IMDb says about John Wick. John Wick is a former hitman grieving the loss of his true love. When his home is broken into, robbed, and his dog is killed, he is forced to return to action to exact revenge. That sounds pretty spot on, guys.
Yep. I dig it.
Yeah. That's the Cliff Notes.
Release date October 24th, 2014, about an hour and 41 minutes. Budget of 20 to 30 million, made $86 million in the box office. I want to start with you guys on how you first saw it originally. And I want you to be specific on this because I'm going to bring this up later. And how did you watch it recently? Norman, you're our special guest. Let us know how you originally saw it and where.
So let's see, 10 years ago, I can probably be a little bit more accurate 10 years ago about my movie going habits, because I really wasn't doing a lot of movie going. I mean, I still watched movies, and 6 months after a major release, you would get something in the Blu-ray or the DVD arena. So 2014, I don't remember seeing it in the theater, and if I did see it in the theater, I would probably be by myself, because I don't think I would have been able to get Carol to go to the theater for an action film of this sort, and an unknown one at best. So I'm pretty sure that I saw this on probably Netflix. I probably have to say Netflix, yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. All right.
But
Lacey,
recently,
recently, yeah.
Not the one that we're going to talk about, but the standard 4K.
Gotcha.
I just watched it on the standard 4K, which is fantastic.
Nice. Lacey, what about you? When did you first see it? And you're on mute, by the way.
Dang it. Every time. Okay, so I saw this in the theaters. I want to say AMC at Phipps Plaza. It might have been at Atlantic Station. Those were kind of my two theaters at the time. I will say that I saw it the preview night a few days early. And then on the opening night, preview night, the Thursday before, I actually went back with my counter and I counted how many people he killed.
You counted how many people what?
How many people he killed, like how many people he went through.
Okay.
So I actually had my little counter, my little clicker from the job whatever. Anyway, so yeah. And then recently, I did, on your suggestion or your statement, I did get the new John Wick. This is the, what's it called? The Cult, Titans of Cult version of John Wick.
Norm gave me the heads up on that one. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. So that's what I did recently, and then I've got the as they come out, I just keep upgrading. So this is the third version at this point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Kyle, how did you see it originally?
I saw it in the theater, but it was later within its theatrical run.
And why did you see it in the theater?
So somebody told me I had to go see it in theater.
Who was that?
Shoot me. I don't know, but if you look on the screen, there's somebody whose face is really big on the screen right now. I'm trying to not inflate his ego about this anymore, more than possible. You'll understand why here in just a minute. But, I did see this in the theater, and then most recently I watched this just a few hours ago on digital 4K with the Dolby Atmos surround sound. And
nice. So you heard all the pew pews. I love it. Yeah, I saw it probably, I think on a preview night, like what Lacey did as well. And then saw it multiple times after that, and then told a lot of people to go see it. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And I watched it on digital and on 4K as well. I've been rewatching it a lot, of course, for the podcast and stuff. So yeah. So anyway, let's get into that, guys. Let's talk about this new release of the Blu-ray or 4K here. And Norm, I got to give you props here for giving me a heads up on this.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and show these off here. These are pretty cool. Yeah, yours looks still sealed, Norm.
I haven't had time to open it yet.
So let me open up mine here because I've already opened it up.
Can I just say that while we're if you're looking at this feels like that Sesame Street thing where it's like one of these things. It's not like yeah. Kyle's just there, like nice and quiet, just watching us like freak out or like fan girl boy over our little digital physical media, and he's like, I had it on 4K. I'm digital. It's fine.
Before you do that though, to your point, Lacey, and this is how much this movie like it means to me, and how excited I am to be here. I rarely buy like physical media anymore. Rarely.
Oh, right on. Okay.
And it has to be very, very, very select, like collector's edition stuff.
Nice.
So when I saw this, to your point, Kevin, when I saw this, I'm like, that seems to be about as ultimate edition as I could possibly find. So I'm going to get that one.
Nice.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm going to open this one up here. So it's got this kind of, and it is the Titans of Cult edition right there. If you could see that, there it is right there. And then, so it opens up around on the side like that. Comes with the digital copy too. And it also has the little back. It shows the puppy. And what's cool is it looks like John Wick's little stash, when you open it up. And then this is the steel book that's inside of it. Okay. Ooh. And it's a really nice looking steel book here. It's shiny with the red circle behind it.
Red circle.
With the puppy, the late puppy.
Yeah, I think it's trying to stab at your heart with the puppy on it. I'm just
I know. It's reminding you why he did the John Wickiness stuff. And then what's really cool too is on the inside of it here, if you open it up, it's got some really nice art cards that are inside of it as well. Cool. And then it's got a coin, the John Wick coin, and it says everything's got a price. And then it looks like it's got a little DVD John Wick stand here. You can see.
You mean that coin?
Yeah, that one right there. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really, really nice edition. So Norm, thank you for bringing that to my attention on that.
I am so happy that I can influence other people's spending of their money.
But I did want to take this time though to showcase a couple other things too. Of course, I think the original one I got was the Blu-ray DVD release here. Yep. You can see the little Best Buy sticker on there. And then of course I did upgrade to the 4K that came out. And this one I thought was funny. Remember when Walmart was releasing those retro slipcovers of VHS with their Blu-rays and DVDs? Now, I don't remember John Wick ever coming out on VHS, but I thought it was funny that they had the alternate slipcover VHS for John Wick.
Oh, that just seems slick.
Yeah, and it says like 50-cent charge if tape is not rewound, staff pick, action adventure, be kind, rewind. I thought it was kind of funny.
Good stuff. It's funny, Kevin, because I think about that. I see that cover and I feel like John Wick would be a canon film.
You would think, yeah. But, first one could have been. Now they also released these. This was before 4 came out. When they release each 1, 2, and 3. This one's still sealed, and I have 2 and 3, and it's really cool too because they also have a coin in each one of these as well. But I kept this one sealed. And before I show you the one that I really like, after 3 came out, they had the John Wick stash book here.
What? That is awesome.
Yeah, I remember the stash book that he had in the third one, Parabellum. Yep. Mm-hmm. And this one I think I got at Best Buy. And then when you open it up like that, it looks like a book, right? And then you open up the book and it's got all 3 of the movies in steelbook form with different little colors and stuff. And I did open up the John Wick #1 on it, but I just love it for the stash book thing on it too, because it works as a stash book, which is really neat. So
and I gotta say that like I am not a fan of steelbooks. I don't like them. I think they stretch too easily. I don't like the fact that it doesn't have anything written on the back. I want to be able to read like the synopses because I'm a weird nerd that way. The thing I liked about this one is that it actually has the case that the steelbook's inside it, so it's not imaged as badly. And I also like the fact that for the very first time I bought a steelbook where when you get the piece that's on the back, it's the same size, right?
So it can slide inside. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's not sticking out. It's not you don't have to trim it with your, your little roll cutter and anything like that. So it's nice. I'm normally not a fan of steelbook cases.
The one that I'm a huge fan of, though, is a gift that you gave to me, Norman. You gave this to me. This was the John Wick back doing what he does best version, and this is says Summit on the side of it. But let me show you here. So here's the front, here's the side, and here's the back. But it came with this back, shows the puppy, and it has a little like credit size card letting you know that it is mine is 671 of 1,000.
Cool.
And also on the bottom, there's a little sticker that says the same thing. It's hard to see on the camera. But yeah, it's limited edition. And then when you pop it out, it's got this really cool photo book inside of all of these great scenes of the movie, right? Okay.
Nice.
But this is one of the cool things I like about it is that it has a lenticular cover on the front of the steelbook.
Nice.
And then here's the back. But here's the cool thing about the lenticular cover. It's a freaking magnet. It comes off. And then you could put that on something else and see like it does that. And then on the inside, they have these coaster size little character cards with their quotes on them and stuff like that. Like here's Marcus says, "Consider it done," you know. So that was a nice one there, Norm. I really appreciate you doing that for me.
Yeah, of course.
Nice. Yeah. So these John Wick and the collectability of some of the physical media, they have spared no cost. A lot of gold coins were put into these.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. So
just to recap, you have 7 versions there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay, that's fair. Hey, I'm down. Get it.
You know, so you guys know how I feel about that.
But I think that's why, like, when I saw that, I was like, you know what, I got one. I was like, this is going to be so much more appreciated by somebody who's like really, really into the movie. I mean, I love the film. We're going to talk about our love for the film, but there's love for the film, and then there's love for the film, right? Like when you go like you went to suit and tie, with your hair done and all that kind of stuff. I was like, that's love. That's love.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. I started the Suit Up for Wick hashtag thing, and I had a friend of mine that met me for a couple of the shows when I was living in Atlanta, and it was a lot of fun. We dressed up, suit and everything. I had kind of long hair at the time, so I had kind of a Wick thing going on and stuff, and I encouraged other people to do the same when the sequels were coming out. So, and I did the same thing with John Wick 4 too. I went to my local theater here in Santa Barbara. I went in suit. People behind the counter were like, "What do you do?" Oh, I get it. So yeah. Well, let's get into the main movie discussion here, guys. And I want to start off with a little backstory here. So during the early 2000s, Derek Kolstad, the writer of John Wick, struggled to gain recognition as a screenwriter. Production up to 8 screenplays per year, none of which went into production. Although he continued to write, he stopped pursuing it as a full-time career until his wife encouraged him to try again. Kolstad secured a manager and wrote 60 screenplays before finding success with low-budget action films, One in the Chamber, 2012, and The Package. Over 4 days in either 2012 or 13, Kolstad wrote a spec script titled Scorn, the inspiration for which came from 2 terrible revenge movies he had watched. The script story centered around a character, John Wick, a long-retired hitman in his mid-60s to 70s who was forced back into his former life. John is modeled on actors such as Clint Eastwood and Paul Newman. Kolstad aimed to explore the characters as the worst man in existence who finds and loses salvation through love and events that followed this. He had difficulty determining the incident that would lead to John's return, ultimately choosing his dog's murder over the cliche of killing of the protagonist's wife and family. Kolstad focused his efforts on the first act, believing a solid opening would make later acts easier to write. And I did want to show a couple of pictures here of the world of John Wick that we're going to get into in a minute. But I kind of want to get your guys' first impressions on how this movie kind of opens up, trying to learn about John Wick and what we learn about, of course, the passing of his wife. And Norm, I want to start with you first.
Being kind of conditioned to do a certain like deep dive in mission log, we look at a lot of kind of like the significance of smaller details and things of that nature. So one of the things that really struck me just kind of like out of the blue, and I didn't really notice this before, the daisy on Helen's coffee cup is the same daisy that's on the goodbye card that is in Daisy's kennel. So there's kind of like this iconography that's going on, like with the beginning of the story, and like just kind of like how a daisy is just it's fresh, it's full of life, it reminds you of sunshine and sunnier days and happier times, and juxtaposed by kind of like the grief that's going on with the beginning of the film, where he's stuck in this kind of like monotonous routine of just existing until these little daisies start like brightening his day, kind of like this path towards redemption. So I just really thought that I love a slow burn to a movie. And I remember watching this, even though I didn't see it in the theater, I remember being really captured by just this slow burn of this character development. Like, who is he? Why is he? What is he grieving? And then, of course, the eventual antagonist, a scene of Yosef Tarasov coming in and adding the dynamic to the equation. And you can tell that as soon as Alfie comes in, the gear literally shifts in that car. I mean, it really changes tone. And I love how Chad Stahelski, he builds a very good runway to the action, as opposed to starting, say, with an action piece, cold open drop in, and then going into some type of flashback. I really like being present at the beginning of the movie and seeing how it unfolds.
Nice. Kyle, what about you?
So back in 2009, a certain little Disney movie called Up came out, and it was the most heartbreaking opening of all time. And then in 2014, John Wick came out and said, "Hold my beer." I mean, first of all, you're drawn in immediately because you've got this character here who's got a little bit of a mystery to him, but he's gone through an emotional thing. You're feeling for the character, and then they introduce the puppy, and then you're just like, your heart is melting with that. And then to lead up to the events of the beginning of the film when his car is stolen and he's attacked, and obviously the fate of the puppy, and then you're just like heartbroken because this dog was like maybe the cutest dog of all time in movie history. And you just add into the fact that you're just like, okay, what? Because you're not sure who John is yet. You know there's something more to him, but you're not sure what it is yet. And you're just like, oh, this is not going to go well. And then as you get the full story of who John Wick is, and it's told in such a way, and I think it's one of the greatest things, is you understand the fear everybody has before we even see John Wick in action. And that fear is planted and that seed is planted. And then when you finally see him in action, it's like, holy crap. And it just goes from there. And I think it's one of the best setups to a movie in a very long time.
Lacey, what about you?
I think Kyle was right. I am a firm believer that John Wick is an honorary Disney princess, because the first 10 minutes of this movie, it rips out your heart and it pounds on it, and then it goes back and it takes your soul with it. Like it's just so brutal. And I like thinking of John Wick hanging out with, like, all the fun little Disney princesses. I think it's interesting. I think that the opening scene being dark and gritty, and you see him, covered in blood, and he's, getting ready to break into the vet's office, and then you get that kind of like stark, opening with the wife and the flashback, and the Willem Dafoe showing up and saying, just here to check on an old friend, because he the look on his face when you think about it, he says, what are you doing here, Marcus, at the funeral? So realistically, as a hitman, and you want, like, the 13th or 14th time you watch this, you look at it and go, oh, okay, so maybe he was checking to make sure that Marcus wasn't, hadn't just found out where he was and wasn't on assignment, because you don't know at that point who he is. But I just, I think that it's the lead into this film is, it's kind of the perfect storm of all the feelings.
Yeah.
And you're just ready for all the things that are about to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, guys. The other thing too that I thought too is that I feel during this time when John Wick came out, I felt this movie also really hit home with a lot of animal lovers as well. And I think we were interesting time because support animals were becoming a big thing, getting them, certified, and I feel too that with like companies like the Dodo and all these videos you see on either Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, all really showcasing the love that people have for animals, and that there's been a big push for protecting against animals as well.
Well,
and
sorry,
yeah,
and being from Atlanta, I mean, Michael Vick and his dogfighting ring had just been.
It's interesting. I was just thinking that. That the whole thing that really kind of came to fruition there.
Yeah.
So, I think that was a smart move. As sad as it is that when it happens, at least you hear it happening off screen. You don't see it happen, but you still see the little puppy there.
There was one thing though, that kind of it added a lot more to the actual scene. So John was knocked out and he stayed stationary.
Yeah.
But the blood trail from Daisy went from kind of like from, to the camera to him. So it means like Daisy dragged herself to John before she died, and I'm just like, that's kind of like, that's the real heartbreak, is that he wanted, she wanted to be with him at the end. So yeah, it was just more than an instant death, it was, he suffered. And I think that's kind of, it was a parallel to how his wife suffered. So, but also, Lacey, to your point with the whole, like, why is Marcus there? I loved the scene. I didn't catch it before, but I love the scene when John Wick takes the pen from the FedEx person and doesn't give it back, because that foreshadows the pencil scene. Like, an assassin wants to take away any kind of sharp object from any person he doesn't know, or
that's
she
subtle.
Doesn't know.
Yeah, I like that. That's
also,
subtle.
in case she is someone who is going to attack, because we don't know, the assassins come in any flavor, right? And so you never know if he's taking it because she might be on assignment.
Exactly.
So one of the wonderful things, I want to have this discussion now, because I think it's important, and it's one of the most really cool things that we've gotten from the John Wick franchise, and we really got a taste of it, but we got a tease of it too. We didn't get everything answered right away, which I liked about it. But in each movie, something new is introduced to the world of assassins. We learn something new about their culture and their ways. And in the first film, and I want to talk about this, called The World of John Wick, the underworld, this is from fandom.com. The underworld in John Wick movies is a world of assassins run by the High Table, an international organization of crime lords. The High Table is made up of leaders from 12 criminal families, including the Camorra, the Yakuza, the Triad, the Bratva, and the Cosa Nostra. The High Table controls the assassins' economy, and its members often engage in political maneuvering for power. Here are some of the rules of the underworld in the John Wick movies. Honor every marker. No matter the price, every marker must be honored. And we learned that in the second film. No killing on continental grounds. We learned that in the first film. The hotel staff are very serious about this rule. Live by the coin. And we get introduced to that in the first film, and we see it take its place throughout the rest of the franchise. Almost all transactions are done using untraceable gold coins. And there was a 2007 short documentary called As Above, So Below, the Underworld of John Wick examines the assassin's lifestyle in the film. I think that was a special feature on one of the discs and stuff. But I wanted to get your guys' take on the underworld of John Wick and what we learned, especially from this movie. Norm, I got to start with you, because I know this is something that really wowed you as well as a lot of fans.
Well, let's go to the first thing that was probably one of the most iconic and newer elements that John Wick introduced us to, and that was the currency, the coin. So
Norm is holding one up right now. Love it.
I am, and it's very rare to me, so I have it in plastic. I remember when this movie came out. My youngest brother, Andrew, he's a huge Keanu Reeves fan, and he cosplayed Neo. He was just all into these Keanu Reeves films. And I remember the very first version of this coin that came out was a 3D printed, terrible reproduction that was like $30 on Etsy or eBay or whatever it was. I bought one for him, spray painted it gold, and sent it to him for his birthday. And he cherishes it to this day, because it's not these things right now, the ones, that come in the DVD cases or the steel books or the collector's items. These things are minted, manufactured. They are gorgeous, and they are probably better than the props that they were in 2014. But the point is that every time you see something like this, it takes you into the world, because it's basically a delivery system into the iconography of John Wick. The coin, I remember the very first time I saw that, it was a picture that you had, Kevin. You see John Wick unearth all of his resources, his weapons, and his finances, right? It wasn't cash. It was gold, right? It's untraceable. It retains its value. And it obviously has a very significant level of currency involved. A dinner reservation is the exact same price as a favor or a room at the Continental. They're all the same value, right? So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I'm sure they have a currency system in place for that. What I like about it, though, is that I never felt that the underworld or the assassins, high table, guild, whatever you want to call it, I never felt that it was overplayed in this movie. I always felt that it was wonderfully subtle and very perfectly textured in the background. I mean, Winston, you know, with Ian McShane and the voice and the just kind of like the whole gravitas behind him, you know that he's a man of influence. You know that when they say it's not, you know, continental grounds frowns upon this kind of violence, Kevin, you and I, Kyle, we were all going back and forth and like, this is why Chad Stahelski is doing Highlander, because he understands sacred ground. He understands holy ground. Big question is, why didn't you just stick Yosef Tarasov on the continental grounds? That's just my big question. But that's what I love. I love when he goes into the bar, it's all neon, it's all hot pink and dark, and everyone is gorgeous. And, you know, like there's not a single misplaced hair in the room. I mean, it's the fantasy, right? It's kind of like a noir James Bond, kind of like neo fantasy that's going on with Keanu Reeves at the center of it, right? Imagine like James Bond after, you know, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, you know, and then his wife is killed by Blofeld. Then he goes John Wick all over everyone,
right? Yeah.
You know, a la Live and Let Die, or not, License to Kill, you know, Timothy Dalton style, right? So that's in a nutshell where I'm at with how.
Lacey, I know you wanted to say something about the John Wick underworld and what we learned.
Well, I think that Norman's statement about the coin, I think that there's a lot to be learned and engaged from that coin, because on October 24th, 2014, 1 ounce of gold was valued at $1,232. And those are 1 ounce gold coins. So realistically, if he's paying someone to dispose of a body with a coin, I can understand like a nice 5-star hotel, I can see paying $1,200 for a room, but he walks into the bar and he gives her a coin for a drink. So I think that the brotherhood is what you're getting with the coin. I think that the value of the coin has nothing to do with the value of gold. I think that's an interesting way to bring others into the fold as well. Because when you give someone that coin, you're entrusting them with the fact that they now have a coin that they can use for any of these other things. So I think that the coin is not just the fact that it's a gold coin because it was nice and cool and shiny and like, oh, that's so, you know, that's such a, you know, it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was really cool to see, you know, him opening up the case and it was like all pretty and, you know, well laid out and it was shiny and awesome. But I think that the inclusion into I mean, it's literally a key to the world. Yeah. I love that. So, I mean, it's exactly what you were saying, Norman, but it's just, I think the value of the coin monetarily, it's interesting to know that, you know, in that box, he had 12 rows of 20 times at the time, $1,200. So that's, you know, $2 million in gold coins wrapped around, you know, all the guns and the weapons and stuff. And interestingly enough, this morning, gold was valued at $2,656 and change. So his value, his portfolio has doubled in 10 years.
I like the fact too that we have Winston in the second film inspecting a new batch of coins as well. Mm-hmm. Kyle, your thoughts on the underworld of the John Wick films, including the the coins and the markers and the continental ground and all that.
Okay, so this is why, especially John Wick, the original John Wick, this is some of the best world building because you're not diving 100% into this world with explanations of everything. They let you figure it out. And it's not in this world, he keeps it simple enough to where you have these things and you can put the pieces together, but you're not blasting everybody with the weight of this canon or anything like that. You can you figure it out for yourself. It's self-explanatory and it's not insulting the intelligence of the viewer, because that's something that I think that happened too much in film these days, is that they tell you everything in information overload. And this movie doesn't do that. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think some of the later Wick films are guilty of that information overload in some aspect. I think the world maybe was made a little bit too big, but here, what they establish in this world for this film and the baseline they give you is so beautiful and so well done. And so it has that tradition. It has that like traditions to it. And it has an old school, long time feel like this has been going on for millennium with this, and it's developed and modernized a little bit over time, but there's still that traditional line that it follows, and that is what makes it so cool. And there's just a feeling of that it's like, this is timeless. What they've been doing within this world and this underworld, and the rules of it are fairly straightforward and not a lot of garbage and BS. It's this, and this, and you play by those rules. And the thing is, yes, Wick had his stash here, but as we found out later, he had stashes everywhere. So John Wick might have been the Elon Musk of the Assassin's world as far as just value goes, but yeah, it's so beautifully well done and beautifully written in John Wick that I just absolutely love it.
This is one of the aspects of this film that really has resonated with people, and they've done a really good job, as you mentioned, Kyle, of world building, and that's what really gives this whole franchise character. Obviously, we've got John Wick, and we learn about all the other characters in the film. But when you think about it, too, the other characters in this film are everything that they're involved in and the world itself. And I remember when John Wick 2 came out, they had that great action figure, and it came with the cool little stash thing that he digs up here, and I'm showing a picture of it here. And so how much is that worth there, Lacey? Like $2 million and plus?
Well, I'm assuming there's 20 coins in each one of the little stacks. And so if you figure 12 times 20 times 1,200, that's a nice little chunk of change.
Smart man did not get rid of it, but just bury it so he can reach it again later. Just little things too. As we learned in the other films as well, we learned about the markers and the hierarchy and the power plays and the rosary beads, all that kind of stuff. They just, they little things that just kind of seep out in each film. Lacey, do you have another comment you wanted to say?
No, I was doing the math. It comes out to about $500,000.
Gotcha.
With the stacks.
Well, in a related discussion here, celebrating its 10th anniversary, there was an interview with co-created David Leitch, and I've got a picture of him up here, and then there is a picture below, or next to it, with three other gentlemen there, and that is Keanu Reeves, Chad Stahelski as well, and so who else is on there too? The other guy,
the lead stunt.
Leitch, yeah. But David Leitch here. So this article came out just recently, November 6, 2024. A different A-list star was first attached to play Keanu Reeves' iconic role, Leitch tells The Hollywood Reporter in a chat for the franchise's 10th anniversary, which returned to theaters November 6. John Wick co-director David Leitch was ready to politely decline Keanu Reeves' initial offer involving a script called Scorn in 2013 alongside Chad Stahelski. The second unit directing duo and then longtime business partners felt that they were ready to make the next step in their directorial careers. They climbed up the stunt ranks for 2 decades, performers, choreographers, and coordinators, establish a varied resume that includes the Matrix trilogy, which introduced them both to Keanu Reeves at different points. Eventually, they became the second unit directors, fulfilling the action sequences for actioneers and blockbuster films, all while utilizing the infrastructure they built through their action design company, 8711. Founded in 1997, their company, Los Angeles headquarters, is where they would choreograph action sequences, and train actors like Keanu Reeves to become unbelievable action stars. In 2019, Leitch and life-producing partner Kelly McCormick branched off with 87 North, while Stahelski turned 8711 to 8711 Entertainment. Furthermore, Derek Kolstad's script about a grieving hitman named John Wick had already come their way prior to Reeves' involvement, and Leitch recalls a different movie star being attached at the point. Quote, "We were first exposed to the script by our manager at the time, Kelly McCormick, who's now my wife and producer. She had introduced us to Basil Einwach and Peter Lawson at Basil's company, Thunder Road, to maybe do second unit work on the script. So that was the first time we read it. And I think Bruce Willis might have been attached at that time." Leitch tells The Hollywood Reporter in support of John Wick's Anniversary, which of course returned to theaters briefly November 6th. I want to talk about this, guys, because first of all, one of the things I've learned over the years too is Chad Stahelski, of course, who is the director of the Wick films. He was also Keanu Reeves' stunt double. And his stunt work goes way back. He worked on a lot of movies, a lot of television productions. But one of the things that hit home with me, found out that he was friends with Brandon Lee, and he trained with Brandon Lee. And when Brandon Lee passed away on the set of The Crow, he actually came in because he had a similar build and such. He actually came in and did a lot of the pickup shots. They needed to finish that film. One of the famous scenes is when you see the Crow returning to the old apartment. That's not Brandon Lee. That's actually Chad Stahelski going up there and meeting Gabriel the cat, stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. But I want to kind of get your guys' thoughts on the brain trust here that we've had of John Wick and what they've brought to the world. Norman, I'm going to start with you.
Well, what I loved about having these up and coming directors and people that have been practicing their craft over the course of decades, it's nice to have a fresh infusion of talent. And I think that when a movie like John Wick comes out and people take notice of it, there's a reason why, because it does feel new, it does feel fresh, it doesn't feel trite, and it doesn't feel overproduced or have 20 different writers and 30 different producers and a marketing campaign before like the first reel of film is shot. You can feel that this is a project that people are proud of, right? And I know that there's an old saying, like, a production, or people do not produce something for the sake of it being terrible. They want it to be good. But there's something that I do want to point out that Kyle, that you brought up. I do think that the reason why John Wick is so good and is so signature and it is so unique is because it really did give us something new. And unfortunately, the Hollywood model is, let's just make the next one bigger. And then the next one bigger after that, because it has to sell. It has to sell popcorn and soda, and
AKA Fast and Furious franchise.
I think it's part and parcel with every franchise. So I can't blame the Hollywood marketing machine for that. That's part of its nature. It's part of its DNA, right? To be able to sell more tickets. That's why this movie is so great. Is because I don't think that anyone expected it to come out. This is why I love the first Matrix. I saw that on Easter Sunday. It was like somewhere in like Dover, New Jersey. Nobody was there. And I was like, what is this? Where did this movie come from? That's the key. And that's what I love about movies, whether I see it in a theater or if I see it at home. It's like Scott Pilgrim. I wasn't there when I saw Scott Pilgrim in the theaters. I wasn't in the theater. I was at home, and it blew my mind because it's unique, right? John Wick was singularly unique. It just captured you from every single moment of the entire movie. And I have to say, if there's one person that I can't live without in this movie, it's Michael Nyqvist as Vigo. I think that he gave the performance of a lifetime in this movie. And I couldn't imagine this movie without him.
That's a great point. Kyle, your thoughts here on the creators of The Matrix?
I want to echo some of what Norman was saying, because what has happened in Hollywood, and I'm going to say about the last 25 years, and we talk about this a lot here on the network with other things, is everything has become franchise. But the things that have come out that have changed movies and how we perceive movies have been films like a Scott Pilgrim, like a John Wick, even when you go back to The Matrix. There wasn't a lot of hype for these films, and it was by word of mouth. And that word of mouth then blew up these films into something bigger. And that's how creativity, unless your name is James Cameron, who just seems to time after time do things that are just movie changing. Most of these things that change Hollywood drastically are the things that come out of nowhere, because we're not expecting it. And then it's like, oh, Hollywood, we can't have an original idea. We take it, we like Norman said, we franchise it, we make it bigger. And what John Wick and this particular group has done to change the action genre in Hollywood, because it was really kind of a twofold thing going on at this time. You had John Wick, and then you also had The Raid, and those two films really turned Hollywood on its head in how they made action films and changed it going forward for how they make action films. And I think it's so important that we have that happen every so often, because things get stale or we get stuck in ruts, especially with Hollywood. And I think when we look at Wick, especially, and what these guys have done, not only just with John Wick, but how they've changed how Hollywood makes these kind of films, it's so important. And it's and in what they continue to do. That's why I when Stahelski finally does get Highlander going and off the ground, I can't wait to see what he does with a cult classic franchise that people have an idea of how he will turn it on its head, but turn it on its head in a creative way that goes, we never thought of that with this property. And I think that's what I'm so excited about, from where they've come from to where they are now. And it's such a great prospect, and we need more of it in Hollywood.
Lacey, your thoughts on the creatives behind Matrix, or excuse me, John Wick?
Well, the creators behind the Matrix have always been on my list as well. We can talk about that for a million years. But yeah, I think that this kind of goes along the lines of showing how diverse and how much of a my words have gone a combined effort it is for everyone on a film set. Because if you look at people like the Strauss brothers for Skyline. Okay, they were visual effects artists. They decided they wanted to direct, so they did a film, and they brought their own visual effects to it. But you see that they took their specific expertise and included it and looked at something. And so it's about point of view, right? They spent all this time doing visual effects, and they thought, you know what, we can do this on our own film. And I think that the same thing goes for Chad Stahelski. You know, he came at John Wick from stunts and making sure that everything was pristine and everything was well done, everything was realistic
and safe.
Safety is a big thing, yeah. But I mean, realistic, I guess, within to a point. But you know, that's why they're so in the commentary. They talk very clearly within the first 2 minutes of the film of the commentary. He states that they always had him run out of bullets. They always counted every round. They made sure that depending on the weapon that he was using, that he had either 9 or 14 rounds. Or well, with some of the larger, not the same, but you know, they were very clear to make sure that within this fantasy world, which is supposed to be sort of comic book-esque, that they took the real elements and made sure that they stayed real within the stunts of it all, and then he talked about gun fu and all the things. But I think, I mean, it's even the same thing. So like Masaoka, you know, he was a special effects artist, and he did that forever, and he decided he wanted to act. And when he was on set for the first time, they were like, okay, so you're gonna have to do this and then hold still because he was like, I got it. Like, that's what I used to do. I know. And then he went on to explain how it was done to all the other actors there. So anytime someone had a question, they'd come to him and say, and it's just this very like connective tissue of how you create a film. And I think that's how it works. It's fantastic. So yeah.
One of the things you mentioned was counting every round. It brought some realism to this fantasy world of well, don't know if it's fantasy. I'm sure there's an assassin world out there, but it was one of those things that it also made for some comedic moments too, when you see him reloading for a second to shoot some guy in the head. Kyle, you wanted to say something?
Just adding on to that too. I think that's one of the things that works so well in this movie is, for as outrageous as some of the ideas are in this movie is so grounded in with its realism that you feel like this world of assassins that's established in John Wick 1 is something that could be real and could exist there behind the scenes, and those little things that maybe we take of as a glance, or did we actually see that or something, that world does exist. I think that's something, in a way, the later films kind of got away from just a little bit, but again, just on focusing on John Wick 1, that is one of the other things that makes this film so phenomenal. It's like you can question in your mind and go, this could be something like this could exist in the world today.
Yeah.
And I will say one other thing, because it's something that I absolutely can't stand in action films. When someone runs out of ammunition and then they just go, and then they throw the gun at somebody. Okay, the one time that this is okay is during John Wick. Because he is actively finding other weapons and using them for.
He's pulling magazines off dead corpses too to fill his own.
So when he picks up a weapon, but the thing is, and they call it the three weapon transition, I think is what they called it in the commentary, where he's got one on each side and then something slung over his shoulder or whatever. 90% of the time he puts the gun back and then switches to the next one. The only time, I think, other than other people's guns that he picks up, uses, and then disposes of, he keeps hold of every one of his own weapons, except for the last one when they're getting ready to fight in the rain, where the specific statement was made, no more bullets, John. This is going to be between you and me.
You know, Keanu Reeves made the social media fun when the video was released of him doing the rain shooting and how good he was, and the practice that he got from professionals, and that was one of the things that they showcase here in this film of how you know they use this, and how special forces people use this and stuff like that, and SWAT personnel, and there's certain things, and they've gotten nothing but praise from people that do this for real, which is fascinating. So yeah. Okay, guys, I'm gonna have a little fun here. When John Wick first came out, I saw it in the theater, and I was the only one in the theater at the time on a preview night. And I went to social media. I went everywhere I could. I told people to go see this movie. Go see this movie. Go see this movie. Go see this movie. And I was annoying about it. And then finally people started watching it. Friends of mine would say, hey, I finally caught it, but I waited for video to see it. Say, this movie's great, blah, blah, blah. So I took credit of saving John Wick. And there's still some truth to that. I'll still take some credit to that because, you know, I went out there. I was annoying about it too. But apparently someone else can take bigger credit than I can, guys. That is Eva Longoria. Mm-hmm. John Wick director hopes Eva Longoria made millions from a timely $6 million investment that rescued the film. When you watch the credit, you see her name is in one of the main producers in the opening credits. Eva Longoria. John Wick director Chad Stahelski said that Longoria 49 recently shared she invested $6 million in the 2014 movie and still gets checks, adding that her only regret was not investing in the entire franchise, which has grossed $1 billion. Chad Stahelski, 56, shared on the Hollywood Reporter, It Happened in Hollywood podcast, that he didn't know the Desperate Housewives star was the investor until after John Wick, which stars Keanu Reeves, was completed and released. Quote, of course, he says, I hope she gets every penny back. I hope she made millions of dollars, he said of the star, who recently shared she's made more than double from the investment. Explaining how that came about, he shared, about a week before we went into production, we had gap financing. We had an investor fall out for about $6 million. So when you're making an $18 million movie, that kills you. That's a big difference right there. And we didn't have any money. So a lot of the crew left. We were losing locations. We literally were 24 hours away from failing. So between Basil, the film's producer, myself, co-director David, and Keanu, everybody deferred, wrote checks, and everything we had put into it, and still it wasn't nearly enough, he added. Then Basil came to us 48 hours before we had to roll, going, hey, I found an investor that's going to cover the gap. And we didn't think twice about it, and we went right into the movie, only to find out nearly a year later it was Eva Longoria. Longoria and Chad Stahelski have laughed about her good instincts over the years. She came up with the last $6 million they need. If they did not, they would not have completed this film, and there would have been no John Wick. Kyle, you got thoughts?
Yeah, because Eva Longoria at that time was making bank. You were talking about her on being the breakout superstar of Desperate Housewives. She's with Tony Parker at that time with San Antonio Spurs. She's everywhere. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world at that time. So in a way, it's funny, but you think about it, at that time for her, $6 million was kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what she was pulling in from the incredible salary she was getting for Desperate Housewives, what she was making on marketing deals. And she's an incredibly savvy businesswoman, period. So yeah, it's surprising in the aspect you wouldn't think Eva Longoria, but then when you stop and think about it, she is probably one of the most astute businesswomen in Hollywood today.
Norm, did you know about this? This is news to me recently.
When I saw when I saw the movie the first time I saw the credits, I'm like, well, that can't be the same person. But obviously it is. You know, the thing is, like, I'm gonna have to look a little bit more in this into detail, because it's not a question of affordability. I mean, you know, it's like most of these stars, when they can afford the money, it's the question of how do they pitch it in order to be able to part with that money. $6 million is not an easy thing. That's a third of the budget, according to an $18 million budget, you know, for that movie. So what's the sit down? You know, what's the pitch? You know, what is the, you know, what do you say? Like, okay, so we have this, Eva, I got 5 minutes of your time. We have a movie about Hitman and stars Keanu Reeves. We have him signed. We need $6 million. Are you in, you're out? I mean, how do you pitch that? Right. And all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'll just move some money around. It's like, I get that she makes money, but no one has like 6 million in the bank just to be able to say, yeah, sure. These things have got to come. And also you got to recoup the investment. So, these, again, being a savvy businesswoman that she is fine. But what did they say to have her sign on the line that is dotted? As Alec Baldwin would say, what is the magic? What is is it passion? Is it a passion project? Do they believe this guy believes that every single cent that they're going to throw into it and all of Keanu's money and all of Chad's money and all of everyone's money, I just need to be the person who's going to bank third of it?
Kyle, you had a comment?
I think there is one factor into this, and it is Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is one of the most beloved people in Hollywood, and you'd never hear anybody talk bad about Keanu Reeves. And I think him being attached to the project and probably how it was sold to Ava Longoria, but were 2 huge selling points. I think Keanu Reeves attached to this film was a huge selling point, even though Keanu was kind of on a downward spot in his career at this point. But he's so beloved in Hollywood that I think it made it easy. That was one of the aspects of getting that kind of money to invest, especially from a fellow actor and somebody who, again, just seems to have an incredible eye for business. And I think having Keanu Reeves attached was one of the reasons why you're able to get somebody to invest like that.
Lacey?
I think that what Norman said right before he said, what do you tell someone before they sign on the dotted line? Very specifically, in the article you just read, it said, we all cut checks back to the production and it just wasn't enough. That's the line that you tell someone when you're trying to get their money. We have invested all that we can of our own money. We are just short.
Right.
When you are willing, in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, the number one rule is you do not invest in your own projects. That is the number one rule in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, that you don't do it. You are specifically taught not to do that. So the fact of the matter is, when he said Chad and David and Keanu, we've all put money back in, we just don't have the budget.
Gotcha.
That's what makes somebody sign on the dotted line.
I mean, I get that for $1 million. I'm not exactly I like to say I wouldn't see a little bit more nuance in what they said when it comes to 6. It's kind of like I got 98 cents. I need $1. It's not that I have 25 cents and I need 75. You know what I mean? There's a difference.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in the commentary, the very, very end where her name came up, Chad said something like, yeah, Eva Longoria, still haven't met her. It was like, I wish her the best. I hope she's like, I hope she does met since, but
let's get into some trivia. Let's get into some trivia here, guys.
Kevin, just one thing real quick. Ava Longoria's current net worth is over $80 million.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing. Good for her. Yeah. I'll name a couple here, then Kyle, you can go ahead and we'll go back and forth here. So John Wick's true name is Jardani Jovanovic. Jovan is a Serbian Hebrew form of the name John. His last name means son of John. Jardani is from the Hebrew, which means of the garden. Kyle, go ahead and get the next trivia here.
Yeah, according to Keanu Reeves, he did 90% of his own stunts in the film. Keanu Reeves' preparation for the role included weapons and martial arts training 8 hours per day for 4 months. My quick question is, how much of that was muscle memory from The Matrix, too?
Yeah, definitely. Keanu Reeves learned and memorized the nightclub fight sequence the day that the scene was filmed. According to director's commentary, they had shot the top-level nightclub fight sequence. Keanu Reeves had the flu. He was running 104-degree fever. You couldn't even get him to sit down, said Chad. He just did take after take.
That's some commitment. But director Chad Stahelski was Keanu Reeves' stunt double in the Matrix movies, and his stunt double and the two became fast friends. It was Reeves who lobbied for Stahelski to get the director's job, as he felt that Stahelski would succeed with this as his debut directorial role.
He was right about that. And I never caught up on this. It's interesting. In an interview with Rudy's Movie Reviews, Kevin Nash stated he told the reason his character Francis the Bouncer was allowed to live. Nash said that when Wick mentions he had lost some weight and Francis stated he had lost 20 pounds, Wick was asking in code how many hostiles were in the building. Francis' reply was 20 because he provided the information to Wick and he was allowed to live.
Interesting. So at around the 28-minute mark before the action starts, John wears his watch in a typical way, but as he prepares for battle, he turns it to the inside of his wrist. Soldiers do this to see the time while holding a rifle to avoid reflections from the glass that may give away their position.
At around the 28-minute mark, the tattoo shown on Witt's back during the shower scene is the Latin phrase Fortis Fortuna Aduvat, which literally translates to fortune favors the strong. This is used as the motto for several military units over the world.
So, according to a cast interview, both producers and Keanu Reeves referenced the number 84 as being the total number of kills by John Wick. At least, you did the counter. I got to know, is that accurate?
I got 84.
Hold on. We're going to get into that later because I got more information on that. So we'll get into that. Okay. Now, I don't know how true this is, but I thought it was interesting. The story is loosely inspired by an incident in Texas involving former Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell, who wrote Lone Survivor, about his fire team's ordeal during Operation Red Wings in Afghanistan in 2005. Luttrell was given a yellow Labrador puppy whom named Daisy after the members of his fire team. On April 1st, 2009, about 1 a.m., Luttrell was awakened by a gunshot and saw 4 men drive by. Daisy was dead in the yard from a gunshot wound. He armed himself with 2 9mm Beretta pistols and chased the men through 4 counties in his truck until police apprehended them. They taunted Luttrell, threatening to kill him, and indicated no remorse for their actions. They were later sentenced for animal cruelty. Luttrell later says, "I spared them because I've killed enough people already." So, interesting. All right. Let's get into the categories here, guys. Let's get into talking about some fun stuff. Now, I've got some slides here showing. We're going to ask you guys about your favorite scenes in the movie. And Norm, I want to start with you. I have some I'm going to show on the slideshow. May not be ones that you've chosen, but give me a couple that you really like, Norman.
Oh, for me, it was so easy, and it has nothing to do with John Wick himself. It's the impossible task scene. As soon as Yosef Tarasov comes in, the way that it's cut between John Leguizamo and then Nyqvist and then Alfie, and I mean that entire scene is brilliant. Here's the thing: is like this is one of those kind of scenes where if you take that out of the core of the movie, the whole movie falls apart. The whole movie falls apart without that scene. I mean, the action's great. Some of the great character work, some of the very emotionally, very, tragic, heavy scenes, the gravitas and stuff like that. That's all fine. But without that scene, this movie doesn't exist because it's the imagination of what you're thinking John Wick can do is more powerful than what you actually see on screen. The whole thing with like the foreshadowing of the pen, and then Vigo saying that he killed 3 men with a pencil. Then he goes right up to Mayhem, the guy from the insurance post, goes, he throws like that fast jab, that shadow punch with a pen or a pencil. Things like that, they still lay the groundwork for 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Right. And if the movie was never franchised, it still remains to this day for me one of the most effective foreshadowing scenes of all time.
Well said. Well said. Kyle, what about you? What are some of your favorite scenes?
There's 2 that stand out, and I am in 100% with agreement with Norman. Without that scene with Michael Nyqvist and how he performs it and the gravitas he gives in his monologue when he's explaining the Baba Yaga, and John Wick isn't the Baba Yaga. He's the man you call to kill the boogeyman. It sets the foundation for the film and takes it in a totally different direction. But I also think there is another scene that doesn't get enough credit for establishing just how well-known John Wick is. And that's when Jimmy shows up at the door to check on John Wick.
The cop, yeah.
And he's like, "So, working again, John?" "No, I'm just trying to sort some things out." But it shows that the police know who John Wick is and are respectful and yet afraid of him as well. And it's those things. I mean, the action sequences are phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but it's those moments that are what makes this movie what it is. It's not the action is one whole side of it, but if you don't have those moments, those action scenes are nowhere near as impactful. Because again, I go back to what I said earlier. Those are the moments that actually build the reputation of John Wick before you even really see John Wick in full action. You get a little bit of it when he defends himself in the house before Jimmy gets there. But I mean, you're thinking to yourself, who is this guy? Because you don't fully know yet, because you haven't seen it yet.
That's the thing. It's like he literally says, like Vigo literally says, as the bodies that he buried on that day lay the foundation of what we are. Like it's literally said that, it's amazing.
Yeah. Lacey, what about you? What are some of your favorite scenes?
I got a couple, three. I think that Marcus's death and the fact that he, when he says, you'll die by my hand, or you're going to go out my way or whatever. And he says, no, I'll go my own way, and grabs the gun and like just kind of death by, attack. I think that's just shows Willem Dafoe's, he's just so good in this role. And honestly, if I'm going to go with a hot take on this, I feel like maybe Agent Smecker, like, left the FBI and went back to his, like...
Tell people who Agent Smecker is, please.
Agent Smecker from the Boondock Saints.
Willem Dafoe.
This could be Agent Smecker changing his name and going back to, like, sniper roots from, like, the military way back when and becoming friends with John. Like, I feel like this in my soul. Anyway,
right.
Also the scene with Dean Winters where the very end when he's in the car and he's like, who's got a gun? Give me a gun. I need a gun. Who's got a gun? And then he just holds the gun. He's like, do you want it? You just and keep away with the gun because he knows he's just in that like weird place where Nyqvist is just like T.
Lacey, English, please.
Do what? Oh yes, that's the thing.
English, please.
English. Jeez, yeah. And then the
English, Vigo, English.
I think my favorite shot in the whole film of Keanu is when he opens up the door to the basement and he's just standing there with a little bit of blood on his shirt with the sledgehammer. He's about to walk down the stairs. Like, that's the shot. I mean, I know that everyone loves
it's a good one.
The suit and all the thing and whatever, but that shot right there is where he decides that this loss is what he is willing. That's the straw.
Yeah.
That's why he's going to go back.
But it's also it's the Joseph Campbell labyrinthian change, right?
100%.
Going into darkness and then
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And also get everything that John Leguizamo does in the entire film. When he cracks Alfie across the face, and I was just like, oh yes. And the fact that he is not afraid of the father, because he's like, when you're dead, he's not going to like this. And he says, but when he finds out what you did, he's not going to mind so much. I mean, he just, that is balls right there.
Speaking of, I'm going to come back to this scene here. You had, you kind of started on it there, Norman, because I want to bring that up in a different discussion. But I love the opening scene where his house gets invaded, because then we start to see how good he is at what he's doing. And then the dinner reservation for 12, with John Patrick Kelly being part of the cleaning crew was great. Obviously, the Warriors, the circle, the club Red Circle, great action fight scenes. The one that I really liked was I love the whole church scene where he goes in to basically destroy everything that he helped found it. And then it leads to that great parking lot scene where he gets captured too. Those are some of the highlights for me there. So, and we've touched on, it's not what you did, son, that angers me. It's who you did it to. Who? The fucking nobody? That fucking nobody is John Wick. He was once an associate of ours. They call him the Baba Yaga. The boogeyman? Well, John wasn't exactly the boogeyman. He was the one you sent to kill the fucking boogeyman. Just some great quotes. Yes, Lacey.
Okay, so just that one scene you're talking about when he gets captured and then he is taken to the warehouse. What kind of hubris does Nyqvist's character have to think that he needs to wait and let him wake up so he can have his monologue.
He fell into the villain monologue, man.
He
Everyone does it
absolutely
when you think you
Because
have
when John Wick is out cold, that's when you kill him.
Yeah, it's funny. He didn't know that Marcus was going to save his life. He's like, I'm just going to go neener. It's typical, So, let's talk about the cast and crew here, guys. We got some great cast going on here, and I'm going to show the slideshow here. Of course, we've got Mr. Keanu Reeves as John Wick himself. Norm, you mentioned Mr. Nyqvist here, and by the way, a lot of people maybe were introduced to him, American audiences, but he was part of the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo 3-movie series that came out. He was the main guy in that, and he was really, really good. Of course, we got Yosef there, Ian McShane, Willem Dafoe, rest in peace, Lance Reddick, Sharon, Dean Winters, Adrianne Palicki, of course, and I know
the
Norm,
man
there. The man he's referring to is Daniel Bernhardt. Of course, he was the lead heavy that took down John Wick. Not only did he pretty much kick his ass, but he took him out with the trick with the car. Was able to knock John Wick out.
He threw John Wick off of a balcony. Right? He bested him in pretty much every single combat, right? And he hit him with a car. I mean, and he would have killed John Wick if it weren't for Marcus. I mean, this guy, it's kind of like he's John Wick now.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to John Wick Rusty.
Very smart man, too.
He was just crushing it, that guy. And I love
John Leguizamo also in this as well. And then, of course, David Patrick Kelly, as we mentioned, part of the cleaning crew. And, of course, there we go.
Hey.
Yeah, so want to get you guys' thoughts on the cast. Norm, you started with this. Go ahead and continue.
Well, I think that a movie like this is made on kind of like the surprise casting. It's like you watch a movie and you're like, it's not supposed to work. Like, like you have all of these disparate actors. They all have their great strengths and all these other things. Like Adrianne Palicki, she was hot off of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was on the Orville. She obviously Friday Night Lights. So it's not like a turn that you would see for her, but she works. And it's weird not seeing her as Mockingbird, as a hero, but, it works. Mayhem, we're seeing all these different, scenes on screen, but that guy he just works. He works in the background and he knows exactly how much he needs to play it up or play it down. Now here's a hot take. Now I can, except for where John Wick and with John Wick and Viggo are concerned, I can replace everyone in this movie. I can't replace those two. I have seen other performers perform those other roles the way that those roles can be performed. I'm not saying they weren't great. I can see them recast as other people. I cannot see John Wick and I cannot see Viggo recast as other people. They're too central to the story. But I have to be also honest, I can't see Viggo being replaced. I can see everyone else being replaced. That guy is too good and too singularly just unique for that role. He's captured me. This is the reason why I love this movie, is because of him.
Kyle, what are your thoughts on the cast?
Well, echoing what Norman says, Michael Nyqvist is actually the heart of this first John Wick movie. As good as Keanu is in it, if he's not playing off of Michael Nyqvist, and Michael Nyqvist is kind of our narrator for this film, and without him being that narrator, I think this film goes in a totally different direction. I will disagree with Norman with one thing, because I don't think you can recast Ian McShane as Winston. I think there's something about Ian McShane in that role, and what we have become used to with Ian McShane and his performances. He just nails that role, because if you're familiar with Deadwood and him as Al Swearingen, you know how he can play the evil, dirty side of it. But here he's adding the sophistication that he has.
But I'm not taking.
I have some trivia about
Yeah.
We'll say that, Norm. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, if in terms of a singular film, right? Not like the Winston that we get to know.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is that he has 4 films to be able to, expand on his character, and they give him great world building depth. But just in terms of if this movie was the only movie that existed, that's the reason why I say that.
I have some interesting information about him, by the way, regarding that role. Kyle?
Real quick, I agree with though, Norman, the rest of the cast is a lot of, to me, outside of really Defoe, there are a lot of those, that guy. Like, I know that person, I know that actress, but I don't necessarily know their name at the time when this first film came out. But there is one crime of this movie, and it's more of a crime that happened with the sequels. The fact that John Leguizamo's character was not more involved in this world after this film, to me, was a crime, because I think there was a lot of untapped potential with that character. I think of
he came in 2, but it wasn't enough, you know?
Yeah. Of all the characters, I think he is the one that we got the most untapped potential out of.
Lacey, your thoughts on the crew cast?
Okay, so just if y'all are if anyone's concerned about Ian McShane's ability to be subtle and very I don't know, just perfect for the role, aside from the gruff exterior, go back and take a look at his film catalog in like the mid 70s. He plays a dandy in so many films, like when he was younger. And that's just like a little thing that a lot of people now don't realize, that he played, you know, characters before that weren't, you know, gruff Al Swearingen or, you know, leaders of, you know, international assassins. I will say, I love the fact that this has a Magic Mike connection. Kevin Nash played Tarzan in all 3 Magic Mike films. That's just wonderful. I think that a lot of people recognize David Patrick Kelly from the Warriors, but for me, it was Sully from Commando.
Commando.
I was just like, you know.
I remember him from The Crow. Yeah.
There you go. Right on. But I will say, as far as Adrianne Palicki goes, I think she is fantastic in the fact that for a film that has very few female characters, she comes in. She is not only kind of the femme fatale of it all, but she's also the bad guy, and she also gets what's coming to her at the end. A lot of times, the female characters are not as, especially in a very, very male-driven film. A lot of times the female characters don't get paid off in the end, and she like that's the final scene where he walks in and says, "You've been denied, your membership to the Continental has been denied." Just boom, walks away, and it was totally the scene where you know they say that heroes don't look back at their explosions. Like that was Ian McShane walking forward and just knowing that like 4 bullets just took her out. That was great.
Kyle?
One thing I did want to mention too, Alfie Allen at this point had the market cornered on the guy you just wanted to see squirm and just get his comeuppance, because between this and Theon at that point in Game of Thrones, you were just like, this guy's slime. You just don't want to like him.
All right, guys. The next category we have a lot of fun with here. This is the extended cast discussion here, and we call this the Ocean's 11. Do you think we need one more? Who would you have added to the cast if you could have? And I'd like to challenge you. You don't want to pick someone that's too A-list. That would, of course, overshadow our main cast here. And I have a list in the notes here of the top 10 grossing stars of 2014, and that was Jennifer Lawrence, Channing Tatum, Mark Wahlberg, Dwayne Johnson, Bradley Cooper, Chris Hemsworth, Liam Neeson, Hugh Jackman, Jeremy Renner, and Martin Freeman. Scarlett Johansson and Denzel Washington close behind. I picked a couple of names here because of where their careers were at the time. I have here we go. I'll bring it up right here. I have Aaron Taylor Johnson. Of course, we all remember him from Kick-Ass during this time. But also Eva Green. I would like to have seen her maybe in the club scene. Maybe have her behind the counter. More notable face there. Aaron Johnson, I thought, would have made a really good heavy, a bad guy going after Wick as well. Maybe shaking the nerdy thing that he was doing with Kick-Ass. But if you guys could have added someone to the cast, who would have that have been? Norm, chime in there, buddy.
Well, first of all, I always fight for Asian representation in my fandoms. And
nice.
How do you not have, aside from Mark Dacascos, who came way later, right? How do you not have like a prominent Asian businessman at the seat at the table, right? So who would it be? It would, for the genre and for a cameo appearance, if that, because he already has built his entire career on a character like this, it would be Chow Yun-fat. How can you not have Chow Yun-fat in a movie like this and just have him like in some?
Well, where in this movie would you have put him? What do you think he would fit? Well,
he'd definitely be like maybe some type of. He would be like a guy who's talking to Winston and then would leave.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know, you don't have to see a Chow Yun-fat in action. He's already established that. You want
like he's running the Continental in China somewhere or something. Like
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like
you know, and you can use that same kind of thing with, or maybe he's like met with a different, you know, group of people there, but he's like, you know, you don't use phones when you're in the assassin game. You go in person. You know, you give him a coin, you fly your jet, you meet in person, no phones, no texts, no nothing, right? You do the honor of doing the business at the Continental. You know, but he's just.
I like Chow Yun-fat. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, he's so good, and you only need to use a very little bit of Chow Yun-fat.
Yeah, because they had a Continental in the fourth film in Osaka, Japan. So that would have been cool if they had something like that. Kyle, do you have if you could add one more?
Yeah, and this is one of the few films I'm going to go with a true A-lister because there was a moment that could have been had in this film. And I'm going to go back to another movie, The Rundown. If you remember in The Rundown, there's the scene where The Rock is walking down into the bar and Arnold bumps in, kind of grabs him by the shoulder, bumps into Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold just goes, "Have fun." And he goes off camera.
I keep forgetting about that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You could have had in this movie, just in that bar in the Continental, John's walking through, he looks over, and there's Tom Cruise as his character from Collateral, and there's just a little head nod between the two.
With his gray hair and everything.
Yeah. I think it just would have been a fun thing and kind of.
It wouldn't have overshadowed. It'd be just like
right.
One assassin to another. Yeah, I like that. Okay, that's cool. What about you, Lacey? Who would you have added to the cast?
Well, if you add Sandra Bullock, she can get mad at Willem Dafoe for being mean to her on a cruise ship after her boyfriend saved her from a bus.
That's too on the nose. I'm sorry.
But no, of course. But no, seriously, if you're going to ask me anytime you have a Keanu Reeves movie, you ask me if someone should be added to it, it's going to be Brendan Fraser and reverse. I want to see Brendan Fraser and Keanu Reeves in a film together. They can literally be in a movie called Movie, and I would go see it.
I've seen the meme. Yeah.
I want that movie.
Where would you put Brendan Fraser in this film?
I think that he could be in any number of spots. He has the ability to play kind of the jovial.
Give me a scene in a film. Where would he go? Where would you put him?
Maybe something like he could be just somewhere in the Continental. I feel like he would be there. Maybe he's handling something. Maybe he's
maybe he's waiting to check in right after John
Maybe
Wick
he's the guy who decided which car to give him at the end of the movie. Who knows? He could be in the motor pool for all I know.
Lacey.
Yeah.
Okay. Kyle, what about you? You had it.
Just real quick, one other thought, at least brought it up. What if when John Wick calls for his dinner reservation for 12 and the crew shows up and the head of the crew is Alex Winter?
That would have been funny, yeah. Hey guys, the next one part of the cast we have here is the Tom Selleck was Indiana Jones segment, who almost got the role or passed on it, and other casting trivia here. So guys, Ian McShane replaced Jason Isaacs as Winston. Imagine Jason Isaacs as Winston instead. Would it have been as good, better, not as good? Thoughts?
I can see
different. I can see it, but it would have been different because
Gotcha.
Isaac has a little bit more heart of an edge to him. I see him portraying it very similar to what he kind of did in Discovery,
or as Malfoy in Potter. Yeah.
So I got some conflicting reports on this. It's on the internet, so who knows what's. Yep, Lacey.
Sorry, his character in The Patriot makes me think that he could have paid it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So this is conflicting information here. Derek Kolstad had no actors in mind when John Wick was a speculative script. The writer had only non-living action stars in mind before it was produced. But producer Kolstad originally wanted Johnny Depp for the role of John Wick, but Johnny Depp turned it down, and Keanu Reeves got the role instead. So it's kind of conflicting there.
Yeah,
thank God. Yeah.
I'm going to say thank God.
Adrianne Palicki's character was originally written as a man. And you may find this interesting here, Norman. Daniel Bernhardt plays the lead bodyguard. Yes, he plays the lead bodyguard, Krill, protecting Yosef. In this film, he serves a reunion between him and Keanu Reeves. They previously worked together while fighting The Matrix Reloaded in 2003, where Bernhardt worked as a stuntman. Daniel Bernhardt played an agent in Matrix Reloaded 2003. He fought Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, on top of the trailer truck during the highway chase. So there you go. Yeah. And some other trivia I have here as well is David Patrick Kelly and Dean Winters were hired on the spot after their auditions. So
I don't see how you don't cast Dean Winters immediately after his audition. He is so great in that role.
He is.
So good.
All right. The next segment we have here is the fast or not so furious favorite mode of transportation. And John Wick's got some cars here, guys. Let's start off. Of course, we have the 1969 Mustang GT. We also have the 1970 Chevelle, and we also have the Charger that we see in the garage of Aurelio's there, which also is nice there. So, Norm, I'm giving you the keys to one of these. Which one are you taking?
Okay, so one thing, I'm not sure if this is in your notes, but two things that I need to, I don't know who was the prop manager on this or if they had a specific taste, but there's a bottle on Aurelio's car. It's called Bunnahabhain. It's so good. It's a really
is nice it whiskey?
It's Scotch.
Scotch,
right? But the one that everyone has seen and the one everyone knows about, and it's really, really hard to get thanks to this freaking movie. Okay, it's called Blanton's bourbon.
Okay,
it's the grenade pineapple shaped bottle that he's drinking when he's getting stitched up. I've had that. It's very, very, very hard to get. And one of the reasons why is because that glass bottle is so signature that I've read that collectors, people that don't even drink bourbon, wanted that particular bottle because it makes it finishes out their John Wick prop kit, for like the gold coins and your weapons and all the cuffs, and you have to have a bottle of bourbon. I mean, I don't know from cars. I think here's an interesting thing. So I was watching a YouTuber talking about these cars, and she asked her audience why didn't she just have Daddy Warbucks Vigo buy him a brand new anything car? And I said it's because it's that car.
Yeah,
right.
Yep. We learned in the second film what's in the glove compartment.
But it's also the power of wanting to steal someone else's property.
Yeah.
Right. It has nothing to do with the value of the car. Of course, it is this 1969 Mustang, but it's that car. When Yosef puts his eyes on it, he's like, I want it. And he's like,
is that the one you're taking? Is that the one you want?
No, I want Aurelio's car because I want the bottle of whiskey that comes with it.
Kyle, what about you? Which car are you taking?
Well, first of all I'm going to say I find it ironic that Mayhem is in this movie because John Wick's car insurance has got to be sky high.
Yeah.
But no, I'm taking the Mustang. I'm sorry. That is a beautiful car. And just, yeah.
I was always favoring the Mustang too, but that stripe down the middle of that green Chevelle, 70 Chevelle is gorgeous. What about you, Lacey? Which car are you taking home?
It's the Mustang.
Yeah.
It's the Mustang.
The trivia I have on this, by the way, is they had two of the Mustang cars and they weren't allowed to damage either of them. The scene with Wick driving aggressively around the airport is 85 to 90% Keanu Reeves behind the wheel. The final shot of the car stopping centimeters away from the trucks was left to a professional. So
it's too bad that they didn't focus on 55 miles per hour in that car. Just saying,
Nice. All right. The Harry Met Sally scene, the best scene or moment between two characters. I'm just going to give you my vote. I love the scenes between Marcus and John. It shows a friendship they have there. They have another scene underneath a bridge as well. Those are my favorite scenes there. What about you, Mr. Lau? What is your favorite When Harry Met Sally scene?
Well, taking it for the comedy turn, because I've already kind of just expressed my love for John and Vigo, but they're not in the same scene together. That's the one I'm talking about. I think that Jimmy and John is hilarious. I think it's a great tension breaker for the whole okay.
You're working there again, John?
Yeah, because noise complaint. It's understood, right? Or there's something there, and like you were saying, Kyle, earlier on, you don't have to spell it all out. You just know with the tone of their voice that something is happening. This guy Jimmy is not a moron. He's like, Jesus, who? I'm the guy that has to watch him. Maybe he's part of, the syndicate, and they have law enforcement that covers these guys, like Watchers cover Immortals, in Highlander.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Jimmy's just like, oh, I can't believe it, dude.
In the second film, he's like, gas leak.
See?
Yeah.
He goes, this is what I'm going to write down in my report.
Yeah.
I got you. Let's not do
Lacey,
this again, right?
What is your favorite scene between two characters?
I think I have two, and they're kind of minor little spots. I mean, all the action scene, everything's great, right? But I love some of the lighter things where, for instance, when Lance Reddick, he comes in after he's been, all beaten up, and he's like, "Here's the doctor in, yeah, okay, send him up." Also, how's your dry cleaners? I don't think anyone's gonna. I don't think anyone's dry cleaning is that.
No one's that good.
Okay, I thought not. That kind of thing. Yeah. And then the first time we see David Patrick Kelly, after they finished wrapping everything up, and you see them, putting the bodies in the van, and you see him getting paid, and he says, "Shall I expect another call, or am I going to be seeing you again, or something like that?" And he says, "Goodbye, Charlie." Like, he is not in. Like, he is not. That is, he's trying to stay out of it. And I just think that little note right there was like, yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Kyle,
there's three for me. First and foremost, well, actually, I should say the scene with Nyqvist and with Vigo and Wick when they're like, "No more bullets," and they go hand to hand. That just
at the end.
These are two old school guys, and they understand it. Number two is that first scene when we see Winston and Jonathan meet up, and he's like, "Jonathan," and you just you know it. There's something. He has a special place for John.
He's the only one that calls him Jonathan, right? Or except for maybe the bartender girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the most important relationship in this film is the first 10 minutes, John and Daisy.
Yeah.
If there's not a heartfelt feel connection between those two, the movie doesn't work. And the aspect, when he feeds the dog the cornflakes because he doesn't have kibble, and then you see the dog just jump right in the car, or how the dog's looking at him when he puts him on the bed, and then he's like, "Okay, get up here the next night." It's all those little moments. If you don't have that connection, the emotional impact of this film drops immensely.
Glad you brought that up, Kyle, because the scene when he first gets the puppy and he brings the puppy inside and he's reading a letter from his dead wife, it just gets me every single time.
There's a scene where he gets up. It's like 6:19 in the morning or something like that, and it's like, or Daisy, he gets up and he kind of like slides like out of bed, and he's up, but he's just like kind of slumped over, and she kind of hops up and starts kind of like pawing at his shoulder blade. And I'm like, I don't know if that was a real moment or if it's a trained moment, but I'm like, it's because it's that energy, like you're saying, Kyle.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't believe that Daisy needs him.
Yeah, Daisy wants that companion. Lacey?
Number one, they had bacon in his beard. Number two, but number two, the scene that we see where you were talking about, Kevin, the reading the letter. Apparently, they had done 3 or 4 takes and 3 or 4 different levels of emotion, and he came back and he said, "I think I'm gonna go to a bad place." He said, "Can you take this one to 11?" He said, "Yeah, but you're going to have to just give me a minute." And so, I mean, I don't know if you know all the stuff, but he's had some like pretty harsh moments.
He's lost a kid. He's lost. He's had.
But that's some real emotion right there in that scene. And apparently that's the scene that they used. When took it to 11. That's the scene they used in the film.
Let's talk about the best fight scene, guys. I've got some mentions here. Of course, the red circle fight scene with Daniel Bernhardt. I also love, of course, the opening fight scene when we start to see the skills of John Wick when he gets home invaded. Norm, what are some of your favorite fight scenes in this movie?
Oh, I love the hand-to-hand stuff just because it's very rare. Like in this movie, like everyone's doing the guns and that's great. Like, 3-gun technique is phenomenal. And like a lot of people really enjoyed how he was able to, like, he used the wrist flicking so that he could eject the magazine really fast so that there was a good catch on that. And it also gives you a good visual cue of, okay, I got to reload. So I thought that was really neat. But I just love the hand-to-hand combat because, again, it goes to the end, with Vigo. It's like, it's visceral. It's man to man, it's like no more tricks, no more weapons. It's just us. course, there's a weapon. And there was a duende moment where you let the knife pass you. It's kind of like, you have to lose the pawn in order to take the queen, right? Like what's bigger, me dying or me ending all of this?
Yeah, he takes a stab to get closer to the prey. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So,
Kyle,
it's the red circle. I mean, from the moment he enters in and goes down to the bathhouse area to just that whole sequence, it's one of the best modern fight sequences ever. I mean, and that's saying stuff because there's some amazing stuff in the raid. There's this. I still go to some of the fight scenes in the Daredevil TV series, this with the Steadicam, that are just the fight scene in the staircase is phenomenal. But with this, because you have the mix of the gunplay, you have the amazing hand-to-hand combat. It hits every note of the type of fighting styles that you could have had in this film. And the thing is that yes, even when Wick is successful, he's not successful the whole way through, because at the end he kind of gets his ass handed to him a little bit here. So that's what even makes it even better, because then you get that redemption later in the film. But yeah, and I'm a big fan of the home invasion scene, just because it really does. That's the first time we see him in action, and then you're just like, okay, yeah, we're dealing with somebody who is a dangerous person.
Lacey, what's your favorite fight scene?
I think it kind of flows between one to the next. I think when he escapes after the Marcus shoots the two bad guys, whatever. And
Are you talking about the church scene?
Yeah, the church scene. He escapes out of the back, and he ends up standing on the on the roof of the car, and asking Nyqvist where his son is. Give me your son. Give me your son.
Cool it.
Right? Yeah. But I think like going from that and then going into the safe house scene, like that, especially because you've got the guy playing the first person shooter game, and so you're like, you're hearing the, and then he's like, turn off the game. The bullet just goes straight through his ear, and it's like, oh damn. That's a great scene. And I also love the fact that he didn't have any conversation with Alfie. He shot him to slow him down. He walked forward, shot him, didn't even give him a chance to say anything, didn't want to hear it, didn't care.
No monologue from Wick.
F around, find out, boom, done.
Yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next category we have is you took him out with what? Our favorite weapon or inanimate object used as a weapon. And I had to showcase John Wick's weapons here, guys. And there is an Internet Movie Firearm database, by the way, that gives you all this, which is cool. He had the Heckler and Koch custom with a compensator as well. He had the short Glock that he hid behind that he uses against Daniel Bernhardt. And he uses that big shotgun that you were just talking about, the Kel-Tec GSG shotgun scene. And then, of course, he's got the Kohari Arms CA-415, the large weapon that he uses in the parking lot scene as well. Some good stuff there. And what's really cool, too, is when you get the action figure I told you about, it comes with, like, all of those. It's pretty cool. So, yeah. Any favorite weapons jump out at you guys you thought was kind of cool?
Yeah, the knife. He had a switchblade. Combat switchblade. And he shoved up that guy's jaw. like the bald guy and he did it nice and slow, because it's like when you get into blade length, or especially like short blade length, it's very specific. It's very personal. Like you're driving hate through your body, through that blade into somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why, like, when he really got that first guy, I'm like, oh, he is a bad
and he's
man.
watching closely as he's doing it.
He's watching the life drain out of your eyes. It's like, I want, he goes, he's almost kind of like, I remember this.
All right, the next segment we got here is the Sean Bean Award for Best Death Scene. And I'm sorry, I got to go with I got to go with Adrianne Palicki. She's like, showing up for a meeting and realizing she is not welcome not only to the Continental anymore for breaking the Continental rules, but just not welcome in the world at all. That's my pick. Kyle, what's your vote for Sean Bean Award, the Best Death Scene?
Okay, before we get to it, as much as I love that scene and how she gets her comeuppance, she's an idiot. She should have known. Come on, she's supposed to be a professional assassin. She broke the rules of the Continental. They're calling for a meeting with her. Yeah, no, you should have known that was going to end well. That's just a personal nitpick there. To me, the best death scene it's actually one of the best kills and most inventive kills in the movie, and it's in the final fight scene as he's running down all of Vigo's men, and he runs over the one who's rolling across the roof of the car, and he's sitting there shooting the guy as he's rolling across the roof of the car.
That is a good one. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Good call, Kyle. What about you, Norm? What's your favorite death scene, Sean Bean Award? Who gets it?
Well, I think probably the most emotional death scene for me is probably Daisy.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Because like the more I look at that scene, it's like Daisy like spent like all of her energy to be with John at the end. Like, is my master okay? Right. So it's kind of like when
you're pulling at the heart tugs here.
Well,
Norm.
yeah. Well, that's the Boromir death scene, man. Like when he took that first arrow, he looked at Merry and Pippin. He's like, run with his eyes. He's like, get out of here.
Boromir,
because those arrow shafts were about the size of the thickness of a quarter.
Yeah, they were like tree trunks, man. Yeah, they were huge. Yeah.
So that's like Boromir's like, I've already lost this. It's just a matter of time. So that's the Sean Bain Boromir.
So the Daisy death scene is your vote. Gotcha. That's a good one. Yeah. What about you, Lacey? What's your favorite death scene?
I still think Marcus. The knife through the kneecap.
Perkins shoots him first. Yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah. He gets the knife in the knees first. Yeah, and then Perkins shoots him. Yeah.
There's definitely been some torture. You see the fist going into the ice water.
Nyqvist like shoots him like 4 or 5 times while he's on the ground.
Right.
Very excessive.
At the opening shot of that scene, you see him, getting, putting his fist in the waters and the ice. So he's been just completely just worked over for so long, and now it's just like a cat playing with his toy.
Yeah.
Playing with a bird. So
Kyle?
The great thing about that death scene, though, is that Marcus did end up going out basically on his own terms. He went down fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes it a little bit more special there. So,
all right, guys, this is a good time to bring this up. We kind of teased it earlier. What is the John Wick kill count for each movie and the total kills for all 4 films? Now, I have it on my notes here, so no cheating. I'm going to go with you, Norm. Norm, how many people does John Wick kill in John Wick 1?
Didn't we already talk about that?
No.
Yep.
I thought it was 84.
Yeah.
77. 77. Okay. John Wick Chapter 2, if you had to take a guess.
89.
Norm?
Dude, 89.
128.
What? See, bigger is big. It's Hollywood. It's bigger, better.
Chapter 3, Parabellum. If you had to take a guess.
Double it. I'd say over
94.
200.
It's a little less. You got to give some more kills to Halle Berry in that one.
Just him. Just him alone.
Yeah, just him alone. Okay. Yeah, we're talking about how many people he kills. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Gotcha.
John Wick Chapter 4.
I would probably
the entire planet.
150.
You are very close. 140. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So the total kill for all 4 films is 439 credited to John Wick.
Wow.
He built a new foundation.
Yeah. Definitely. Had to share that. Yeah, I got that off a Screen Rant. I want to give him credit there.
Nuts.
439. John Wick 1, he killed 77. Jumped it up to 128 in Chapter 2. Chapter 3, 94, and John Wick 4, 140. I just finished watching all 4 of these, and I just finished John Wick 4 literally like about a couple hours ago, and I forgot how many people he kills in that one as well. I want to give a shout out to the soundtrack here, guys, because Tyler Bates, who this is our Kenny Loggins or John Williams' best use of music or song in this. If you don't count the songs, then of course we have, of course, "Killing Strangers" by Marilyn Manson. But Tyler Bates soundtrack in this really, really sets a mood, and there's a John Wick theme in it that you hear in all of their films. Anybody have any comments on the music?
It fits so perfectly, and I mean that's the big thing. Is just this is one of those times where the music is there and it just sets the mood, but it doesn't overpower what's happening in the movie. It complements it. And I think that's the key to it, because you actually kind of forget about the music until you watch the scene and go, and then you think about it after. Yeah, that music just hit perfectly in those spots.
The only time I actually noticed that there's in-universe music that that's not like soundtrack and it's not a specific like score over are the songs that are played in Yosef's posse's car.
Right.
Kind of like the gangsta music and stuff like that. And it really kind of sets a tone for, I guess, the kind of like the youth and kind of like the I wouldn't say it's kind of like the not ignorance of youth, but just kind of like that's like immortality that they think they have. Kind of like, yeah,
your attitude.
Yeah,
that's why the Tyler Bates soundtrack overall really stands out. It's when you start feeling you and then you get that club music too, and you're like, yeah, this is where John Wick's going to open things up. So we got the Fall Guy Award for Best Action or Stunt Scene, and a lot of it kind of ties into some of the fights as well. But I wanted Norm, do you have any shout outs to your favorite Fall Guy stunt scene?
Yeah, I don't know how they did the scene because it looked like there's some type of splicing going on, but I can't figure it out. But it's basically when John Wick gets dumped over the over the balcony, and you just thud. He lands.
That was a stuntman taking that fall, right,
dude? He landed like, I mean, I'm sure that everything's safe, but in the the reality of it, he lands on like his magazine clips on his back. I'm like, oh my god, that's just gotta hurt. Right. But it's so final. He just hits and there's no bounce. He just drops like a pancake.
Lacey?
Right? They actually did one of the special features, one of the featurettes was literally specifically about that scene and how they dropped him over onto boxes and then they did the match cut with Keanu. It was a really interesting, I mean, but the guy who his stunt double that went over the side, apparently that's the different stunt guys have different kind of specialties. And he went over into boxes, and then the next, Keanu was just kind of like jumped into the frame, just kind of smash and match it. But
any other shout outs to favorite stunt scenes?
Yeah. The one car that just at the very end when they're going through the dry docks.
Yeah.
He gets like smacked off the edge. just 2 stories, just upside down, smash.
That's another thing John Wick done is they perfected the stunt cars with using them as weapons effectively. Not just running someone over, but like slapping them around and knocking them around. And it's just Kyle. Do you have any favorite stunt scenes, action scenes?
I think it's when he gets outside in the church and that battle there, because it's so well choreographed, and because of just the peril you feel John Wick is in that scene really adds to
That's
it.
when Krill uses the car and knocks the other one that makes John Wick fly across the parking lot. So yeah, that's a good one. All right, next category, guys, fun one here. The Star Wars Twin Sons favorite filming location or set pieces, and we got some to choose from. Of course, the funeral scene with the rain, looked really cool. That one is where is that one, by the way? That is Queens, New York. And then we have the inside of the Continental, which is at the Cunard building. And then, of course, the famous outside of the Continental there. That one is the Haro Sushi building on Beaver Street. And then I got to give a shout out to John Wick's house in Mill Neck, New York City, New York. That someone owns that one. And then, of course, the Red Circle Club. Those are the ones that I wanted to highlight there. Norm, what are some of your favorite shooting locations or filming locations?
I like the bar at the Continental. I just really like the way it was laid out. It looked
good call.
It looked the part. It wasn't again like overdone. Like Red Circle. It's obviously thematic, like all of the architecture. It's either Gothic or modern, kind of like and I like the Continental because it's its own thing, like it. Again, it's well lit. It's like Winston's table is very plush, because he's conducting very serious business. But at the same time, though, it's also very, it's simple. It's not overstated. So I really like the bar there.
What about you, Lacey? What's your favorite set piece or filming location?
Well, I love the house. First of all, the house is amazing. And I love that they actually talk about in the commentary about the people who were like, oh, that'll be great. We'll have like a movie shot in our house. That sounds so cool. And then 200 people showed up and they were like, oh no, this is going to be a lot. But the other thing is specifically the locker room scene in basement of the nightclub. That the way that was set up, and the just like where they come in and they've got the sinks here and the lockers, and everything. I think is a really interesting location. I think that it allowed for a lot of kind of sneaky business, sneaking in and sneaky business. Yeah. That was
Kyle?
a good shot.
It's the Continental. It's what I like to call high class retro because it has an old school feel to it. It doesn't have this super modern feel to it. Everything kind of has it feels like it's an older classic hotel, but everything's still very high class. And I think just when you also add into what the Continental represents and what the rules of the Continental are, I think by far it's the best location in the film.
Yeah, I give you a shout out to the bathrooms at the Red Circle Bar. We'll get into more of that later, but let's get into another fun one here, guys, that we always like to do here. This is if you were a non-speaking extra on set, what scene would you want to be in? And Norm, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, easily the spa bath pools. Easily. Yeah. Like why wouldn't I not want to be in?
Are you talking about the bikini-clad women with champagne walking around in the water and stuff?
Give me another bottle. That's me. I'd be like, yeah, give me another bottle. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like I don't know. I mean, any of those scenes would be great. Put me in the funeral scene. Right.
What about you, Lacey?
Leguizamo's garage.
Yeah.
You get to sit around and see all the cars, hang out, look at all the machinery, and then you get to watch him just bitch slap Alfie Allen like that.
I would be like, oh,
right. I would turn into the cast of Friday. Oh.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle?
There was only one spot where it would be the most intriguing people watching spot in the film. That is the bar of the Continental.
Ah, yes. Yeah. It's a good one. I like to be on the dance scene where Youssef is running around in a towel, like one of these dancers, going, oh, there's that guy right next to him going, dude. But, I would probably also want to be in the bath scene, walking around in there would be kind of cool. So, right, Norm? Let's get into, I want to get into this one here. This is the Titanic, I'm King of the World career moment here. It's kind of like your Apex Mountain. Actually, you know what? Hold on. I don't know if I put him in here or not. Hold on. Let me double check. I did not. Okay. So yeah, this is the Apex moment here of where we like to kind of mention where, who was at this moment having a career moment. It could be one of the stars. It could be an actor. And I just want to show a picture here. I think these guys right here, you could say Keanu, because he is coming off some not so popular films. 47 Ronin, Tanked. He's doing all these kind of weird little things. You could say this was his comeback film. You could also say Chad Stahelski, director, David Leitch, co-director. Let me give you an idea here. So Chad Stahelski, he is attached to 11 upcoming projects here, directing and or producing. Okay, he did all the John Wick films, of course. Also, he's producer on the new John Wick related film Ballerina, which takes place between John Wick 3 and 4. He's also producer of Nobody, a movie called Wicked Game, Gangsters of Shanghai, and Rainbow Six. David Leitch, director. He did more recently the Fall Guy movie there. He did Bullet Train. Which, he also did Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, Deadpool 2, Atomic Blonde. Derek Kolstad, popular now as ever. Of course, he's written John Wick 1 through 3. He also was written Nobody, and he's also doing Nobody 2. Falcon and the Winter Soldier did 2 episodes. Continental, all 3 episodes, and he's also getting a kickback on the Ballerina series because it's based in the John Wick world as well. So those are my vote. Would you guys think the same, or you think someone else got a King of the World moment out of this?
I think that maybe Dean Winters. I mean, he had been on 30 Rock for half dozen episodes, maybe a dozen episodes, and before that he was in Rescue Me. But the main part of his Rescue Me was in the first 2 seasons, and then he kind of was flashbacks and stuff for about 7 years. So I think this might have been kind of a new
okay, like that
up and coming kind of thing. Yeah, kind of a resurgence.
Kyle?
I think on the Dean Winters thing, obviously, I think Mayhem is his apex, but he had an incredible run on Law and Order Special Victims Unit after John Wick. That was really good too. But
By the way, I got to give him a shout out to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He played the annoying police officer that would come in and take all the credit from all the callers.
Yeah.
My feeling is this, though. I think it is Chad Stahelski's King of the World moment, and he's still on it. So I think that's that. I think it's Keanu Reeves' third King of the World moment, because I think you go back to the love everybody had for him after Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
And then The Matrix, and now John Wick. And I think he's one of the few people who's had that many King of the World type moments.
Speed, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of put Speed into that Bill and Ted time frame category.
Yeah, he had kind of his late 80s, early 90s, and he fell off a little bit, and then he came back with the Matrix trilogy, and then he fell off again, and then he came back, and now he's stronger than ever. So yeah.
And I'm gonna say for David Leitch, though, Apex Mountain might be Deadpool 2. You do a Deadpool film, that's a pretty big deal in Hollywood.
He's been doing some action
in the Fall Guy, but I mean, to do a Deadpool film is
Norm, what about you? Who has a King of the World moment, you think?
For me, I actually thought it was Adrianne Palicki, in this movie, because like there's the popularity of TV shows, and then there's a popularity of movies, right? Movies just have a wider, larger, I think, just like deeper audience base. And I think that the more that John Wick, the more it was shown, like the popularity of the grassroots movement behind that movie, like you were in, like, Kevin, like you were saying, watch this movie. Perkins was a huge character in this movie, right?
Yeah.
She was a catalyst of change in this movie. I would say probably like Ian McShane meant right behind her, because like, okay, there's Deadwood, and then there's this. Like there's not to slight TV, but TV is very niche, right? But movies are global, universal, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to see a lot more people are going to be like, hey, I saw that John Wick movie. That assassin chick was awesome. Versus I really loved her in The Orville. Versus I really loved her as, the characters in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or in Friday Night Lights. As good as she was, this is movie level stuff, right?
Yeah.
This movie level power. So
that's a good call. Yeah. All right. The next segment we have here, and I'm going to lead this one off here. This is the Aliens Nuke It from Orbit hot take. Okay. And I could say too that action movies in general, got a kick forward. Everyone's trying to be a John Wick now. I mean, obviously you have your big action franchises over the last 20 years. You have, of course, Fast and Furious, and then you have Mission Impossible. And of course, then you have other smaller ones, like the Taken series and stuff like that. But my take here is this, and I got a couple here. All right. In my opinion, and I had to think hard and long about this, this is the best introduction to a character ever. And what I mean by that, let me get that slide up here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the famous scene here of Michael Nyqvist's character. And this is before we see John Wick do anything violent at all. And you realize who he is because he's introduced by name in Aurelio's garage by saying, "We own you, my father this, my father that." And then you see the response that Aurelios has, and he slaps around Yusuf saying, "You don't realize what you've done." And he calls him, and then you get Aurelios going, "Well, yes, I did hit your son. He stole John Wick's car and he killed his dog."
Oh.
And then you see this man of power, this crime lord, turn around to the camera going, "Oh." Now, I had to go back far and go introductions to characters. And one of the biggest ones I think of is the introduction of Darth Vader in the original Star Wars. You just see him come through the door, and he's impressive. And it's very impressive. One of the most memorable character introductions of all time. But you really don't get a lot of backstory about him or lead up to him. He just comes in and goes boom, and he makes his entrance. When you get this line in this scene, I still get chills every time I see this scene. And now that I'm talking about it, it makes you go, holy shit, who the hell is John Wick? What kind of mistake did Yusuf make? In my opinion, this is the best introduction to a character ever and what is about to come. And like I said, Vigo, I heard you struck my son. Aurelio, yes, I did, sir. May I ask why? Yeah, well, because he stole John Wick's car, sir, and he killed his dog. Oh, and you and I have talked about this, Norm, in the past, about the scene, and you have also alluded about how important this introduction was. We've discussed this before.
This is the scene that sells the movie. Really,
exactly.
everything else is great. I mean, it's all, above board. It's top shelf, like great action, great entertainment. But unless you sell the character motivations, you don't have the movie. And that's the thing. It's like, this is literally like the definition of a reputation precedes itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And without like firing a shot, all you really know is that what Yosef did was so bad that Aurelio had to hit him to knock some sense into him and saying, like, you have any idea what you just did?
Look at the repercussions it took through all 4 of these films.
Right. It's like, you have just unleashed hell on earth. It was bottled for a small time. Right. And now, you idiot, spoiled child. And that's exactly what Vigo's like. Yes, my son is an idiot, spoiled child. There's nothing I can do for him.
And what's interesting too, is when you see the bar scene with Dean Winters, and he, before Yosef comes in, and they just completed some deal, and you can see that Vigo is contemplating what's going to happen next, and you can tell he's troubled, and you can kind of go, and this is what's great about Michael Nyqvist in the scene, is that he's already seeing the death of his son. It's imminent, and he doesn't know what to do, and then he has this moment against Yosef, and then we get that introduction, but then we actually see John Wick in action at his home when he gets invaded by the crew, basically, and he dispenses all of them, right? Then you see Jimmy come up as a cop, and we're wondering, we don't really know who Jimmy is yet, and Jimmy goes, "Evening, John." Wick goes, "Evening, Jimmy. Noise complaint." Looks over the shoulders and he sees the dead bodies. You working again? No, just sorting some stuff out. Oh, well, I'll leave you be then. Good night, John. Good night, Jimmy. That tells you that not only is he good at what he's doing, he has a reputation that precedes himself. That the fact that the local cop, whether he is part of the underground, the table or not, he's like, "Do your thing, John. Okay, walk away." Best introduction to a character ever. The other thing I wanted to mention too, Kyle.
It's top 3 for sure. I'm going to go to one of your all-time favorites though, Kevin, too, because I think it gives it a run for its money. I still say the introduction of Indiana Jones.
That's right.
I thought about that, Kyle, and I almost mentioned it. But to me, it after seeing John Wick, it's definitely like a top 3 or top 5, because Indy, obviously you see. You see the gun being cocked behind him when he's looking at the tattered map, and then you see how good he is with the whip and stuff. But to me, John Wick just takes it all. My other hot take on this is John Wick not only resurrected Keanu's career, but elevated it to superstar status. John Wick is, I think, the movie that Keanu Reeves is going to be known even more than The Matrix, because I feel like the last 2 Matrix films still get a lot of negativity on them because they're not as good as the original. I feel like, and not only that, he did the press tour on all these. You see all the interviews of how excited he is, and the stuff he's done some interesting little things here and there. But I feel like not only is he now level superstar status, he's also one of the nicest guys on the planet. And I feel like also that John Wick, when it comes to action films, has redefined action films and brought him down to a more realistic level on how you deal with action and gunplay. And I really think that when it comes down to the type of action films that we have seen out of John Wick, they have elevated the genre so much.
Go ahead, Lacey. Go ahead.
I think I'm gonna go with what Kyle was saying about Indiana Jones. I think as far as what Kevin, what you were saying with John Wick, I think that he might have the best anticipated entrance, the best anticipated intro, because realistically, what you're talking about is people talking about him. It's not his actual entrance. It's
introduction to a character.
Air of John Wick. But yeah, I mean, Dang, Bill.
Anyone else have a hot take? Nuke it from orbit, Kyle.
I'm going to go off of yours because as far as Keanu and the superstar status, I think it ties into that, and I agree with everything you said about it, Kevin. However, I think Keanu has reached superstar status twice now because he was at superstar status with The Matrix. He was on another level of anybody. And I am willing to say, as far as just superstar status, he has had moments of superstar status bigger than any other actor in Hollywood. Now, I'm going to say, I'm not saying sustained superstar status. Guys, I think that's the difference between like a Tom Hanks, a Denzel, Tom Cruise, and Keanu. But I don't think any of them can say that we've had something that was industry changing in our superstar status, like Keanu Reeves has done now twice. And to say that, I can't think of any other actor who's changed Hollywood twice. Like,
it's interesting you say that, because when you look at after his last Matrix film, he did in 2003, did Something's Gotta Give, a movie called Ellie Parker, Thumbsucker, Constantine in 2005, A Scanner Darkly 2006, The Lake House 2006, Street Kings 2008, The Day the Earth Stood Still 2008, The Private Lives of Pippa Lee 2009, Henry's Crime 2010, followed by Generation Man of Tai Chi, 47 Roman, and Extreme Pursuit. So obviously his career was just kind of like, and then John Wick comes and boom, there he is again, Kyle.
I'm going to have to disagree with Kyle on that, though. I think that if there's somebody out there that actually has pushed the industry forward in terms of A, action movies, and B, technology, it would be Tom Cruise. Like, because Tom Cruise has pretty much done that in both franchises, in the Top Gun Maverick movie franchise for sure, and definitely in in the Mission Impossible franchise, in terms of pushing the technology and action quality forward, and sustained that type of just that global superstardom. He's very unmatched right now.
Lacey?
The other thing with Keanu, real quick too, is one of the aspects of it too that makes it different than like a Tom Cruise. In this aspect, Keanu doesn't care about having that superstar status.
Oh, that's not part of that. That's part of the equation, though. That's not part of the equation of this argument. It's not whether or not they care. It's what have they done. No one cares about what they care about. Like, I want to know what their next project's going to be.
But that's what I'm saying. But I think that's why Keanu doesn't have that sustained thing, because he's willing to take on those little projects where Tom Cruise is always looking for that big superstar.
Oh, that's presumption. I think that's a wholly unfair argument. We're trying to get into the minds of Keanu Reeves and Tom Cruise. We don't know what their motivations are for going into pictures. They want to make good movies. Tom Cruise has always said in his junkets, I want to make a good movie, a movie that I want to go see. I don't know. I don't see their personalities or their kind of like, their mission statements going into their movies. Their quality and their talent is going into their movies.
Lacey, did you have a comment you want to say?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I kind of disagree with you, Norman, a little bit, just with the fact that I don't think I can remember a time where Tom Cruise didn't do a giant tentpole film. Like, every film he does is very, very much, flash bang. And don't get me wrong, they're great movies.
But what does that have to do with the argument, though?
But I'm just saying that I wouldn't discount what Kyle said about like the way they choose their films. Keanu has a tendency to fade into the background because he takes breaks. He does other things. He's big into philanthropy. He does all kinds of other stuff. So he likes to do some of the small things, take breaks from the big, huge things. When you look at, Keanu Reeves training for like this or training for Matrix, there are hundreds of hours of training montages on these. Even just if you look at the behind the scenes videos on the movies, on the DVDs and Blu-rays. When you look at Tom Cruise. And again, this is not saying that either one of them are bad or approach things differently. I think that they just choose their films differently. So when it comes down to it, maybe Keanu Reeves picks some smaller little things that he just enjoys.
I think each of those guys do have a different approach to picking their films. I think that Keanu, he'll just do the little low budget thing if he thinks it's fun, something different. I do think Tom Cruise will choose to pick a bigger film, because he likes doing the action stuff. So I think there's a
the Michael Mann film. I mean, that wasn't a big film. It's big because he's great in it, but it's not big because it's a big budget film. I mean, that's a really good example of Tom.
Right.
I was saying, like, I'm not exactly sure what the point is of all this, but I'm just saying that we don't know what the inner workings are of a Keanu Reeves or Tom Cruise that make it their, the one career over the other.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's one more point, Lacey. I'd like to get to the next segment.
Okay, I was switching gears. My hot take. I would like to add Jackie Chan to that list as far as people who have had sustained credibility especially within the stunt field, and like just making so many changes and keeping like safety measures and doing things, for real and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a
Gotcha.
person that can't be discounted in this, especially in the stunts category. I think my hot take about Willem Dafoe's character switching from the Boondock Saints to John Wick, that's my hot take.
I do have a literal hot take that was supposed
to what you got, man?
For me, the more you give Keanu to say, the less effective he is.
Fair.
Yeah, fair.
Also,
that's a good point. Yeah.
The scene where he says you're going to die screaming alongside him, that fell so flat for me at the moment where it needed to not be flat. So
that's a good point.
I will also say, Kevin, that list of movies that you listed, I own every single one of those.
I'm not surprised.
Three Kings highly underrated.
Got it.
All right, let's talk about what happens next. Usually if a film doesn't have a sequel, we kind of speculate on this, but we know that this is a franchise now. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on John Wick franchise we have here. The Wick world, John Wick, of course, came out in 2014. Chapter 2 came out in 2017. Chapter 3, Parabellum, came out in 2019. Chapter 4 came out in 2023. And also, if you may have missed it, we had the Continental limited TV series that was 3 episodes. That gave us a little background on Winston, and I think took place during the 70s. I only saw it once. I want to get your guys' thoughts. If you had to rank the movies, John Wick 1 through 4, where would you put it? Norm, I'm going to start with you.
Well, you know what? I don't think I'm the only one who has brought this up. Kyle, I'm completely agreeing with you. I think that John Wick started so strong. It's kind of like Highlander, right? It's a weird Highlander curse, because I do think that without any of the other movies, I think John Wick stands alone. And I think it stands alone at a very high level in cinematic history, for what it does, for what it has done. And I just think that every single time that I've seen a subsequent sequel to this franchise, I think that the translation of why this first film is lost, like per sequel, because I like the second movie. It was interesting. And this might be a hot take though. I could not like that. The guy who was like the guy that called in the marker, that guy was terrible. That guy was no Vigo. Right. So unless you're bringing in a Vigo, like it's like if the Emperor sucked, right? No, it's like, no, you got to bring Vader, then you bring in the Emperor, right? Because it just escalates how awesome it is. I think the only reason why I watched one of those movies because Mark Dacascos was in it, and I'm like, well, we rarely get to see him ever, unless you're a Hawaii Five-0 fan, or Double Dragon. So like, to boil it all down, I think that Hollywood has a really bad tendency of looking at franchising things that we've talked about and basically say, let's take this next thing and just do double of it. Right. And that makes am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
I get kind of like uppity about it. It makes no fucking sense when they do that. Right. Because you can tell the same audience that's counting the magazine clips and the ammo that's coming out and those different cues are the same audiences that are watching the next movie and the next movie. And then you, the audience, you're fucking smart. You are a smart audience out there. And when things get bigger and better and bolder, you can see the cracks start happening because producers and marketers and influencers are all getting a piece of this. And John Wick in and of itself, it might as well have been an indie movie. It was so good. It was so fucking perfect because it did exactly what it needed to do. No more and no less.
Good call. Kyle, if you had to rank the John Wick 1 through 4, would you put it?
Wick is number 1, and there's no question about that. Wick, I would go probably Wick 2, Wick 4, and Wick 3. Now, I echo so much of what Norman says because what I love about the first John Wick film is it still feels a sense of reality to it. It feels like, okay, could happen in the real world. By the end of John Wick 2, when John is excommunicated, and all of a sudden it's like everybody on the planet feels like they're an assassin. It's like the rest of the world disappeared. And it's like, okay, well, the entire world is this assassin world. And I think they got a little bit lost within that. There's some phenomenal ideas. I cannot wait for Ballerina to come out. I'm really looking forward to that, exploring that side piece of the John Wick world. But it took away some of the magic of that first film for me. The fight scenes are, again, continue to be excellent all around. But I think as we get further into the John Wick world, they almost went too far into the deep end of it, and they kind of lost some of the things that made that magic of that first John Wick film. And again, I understand it because you always want to make the next thing bigger and better. But that to me, that first John Wick film is one of those near perfect films because of what it is and how it is, and it doesn't feel like that Hollywood blockbuster. Starting with it, I would say especially John Wick 3, it felt like, okay, now we're cranking out Hollywood blockbuster John Wick films. And I think you can feel the change in the movies with those two films compared to the first two.
Lacey, what are your thoughts? Where do you rank the 4 John Wick films?
Okay, so I think that franchising is always going to be, I mean, for the most part, a cycle of diminishing returns. Like, you're going to put more money into it, you're going to get better stunts, you're going to get better spectacle, but story sometimes can suffer. I think that they have done well in the John Wick franchise with making sure that the next guy is the next guy and the next guy. I think Norman has a point when some of maybe the actors were chosen differently, oddly. But I think that for me, when I go see John Wick, I want to see gun fu, I want to see car fu, I want to see dog fu. And the fourth one was like basically just like F you. So it was like, so for me, I think it's 1, 3, 2, 4. Just because the dog fu in 3 was just so great. Like, I mean, well, granted, that's only for like 30 minutes of the movie with the Halle Berry portion. But I think that piece of it elevated, for me, my interest in watching it over the second film. I enjoy all the films. I know that when I see John Wick, it was amazing, right? It was damn near close to being a perfect film. I don't expect sequels to live up to their origin.
Agree.
So yeah. I go into it with an expectation of enjoyment, a little bit of popcorn, a little bit of beverage, a little bit of relax, watch the fun stuff, and not, if there's one thing that Die Hard taught us, it's like, don't hold your breath, right? So I think this is one of
Wait a minute. Die Hard 2 was awesome.
I didn't say Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 3. I think, well, that's another.
Go ahead, Lacey. Go ahead.
Right, okay, but I'm just saying, like, when it comes to sequels, some people love, like the first and second one are usually fine, and you get to the third one or the fourth or the fifth one, there's some diminishing returns on that. I have not seen Continental. I can't wait for Ballerina. That's gonna be great. If there's another one after that, I will go see it because number one, I love Keanu Reeves. I will, like I said, I'll watch him just do a movie called Movie with Brendan Fraser.
You've said that twice now.
I will, like I said. For me, it's gun fu, then dog fu, then car fu,
okay.
And F you.
John Wick 1 is my favorite. And it would go 1, 2, 4, 3. That would be my order. Okay. The thing with the John Wick films, though, that I looked forward to each time watching the sequel was, are you going to give me more about this world? Am I going to learn something? Are they going to introduce something new? Are they going to introduce new characters that are cool and interesting? Are they going to introduce new gung fu style or new weapons? Or new ways for one of the things I love about action films is awesome death scenes, whether they're funny, whether they're not, I love that. And I got that with each sequel in one way or another, especially with the underworld of the assassins. This has been one of the most fascinating things I have loved about any movie franchise ever. Obviously, I'll go see all the sequels to the Fast and Furious just because I want to see how more insane they get, but I know it's going to be silly. But for me, I felt like they've built on the world in each chapter and you learn something new. And I just got off watching 4 and they introduced some new things about this, new things that they could do for John Wick to get around certain things and introduce new interesting characters. And that's why I love this world. And to me, there's no diminishment for me. There's no like, this one I could skip, because there's scenes in these. I mean, Halle Berry is in it for only like 30 minutes or less, but you're introduced to the marker that John Wick has on her, because that came from the second film. And he calls in a favor to get where he needs to go for the next part of that film. And then he puts his thumb on it and he gives her the marker and he says, you've helped me. The marker's now clear and done. And plus you get to see there's dogs in every movie too. And I love that. And they're used effectively. And I thought it was great that you said, Lacey, dog food. You got dog food in this movie, in these movies.
And I will say this, the best thing about the third film is that when she steps forward to get mad at the guy or whatever, she's like, he touched me. He shot my dog. And he's like, I get it. It was the best line.
As I mentioned, there's the Continental, but yes, you touched on this. The Ballerina is coming out this year, guys, and this takes place during John Wick 3 and 4. Keanu Reeves will be making an appearance in this. Norman Reedus, he will be making an appearance. Ian McShane and Lance Reddick. Lance Reddick, of course, shot his scenes before he passed away. Angelica Houston, of course, returns because she runs the Ballerina Russian house, basically. Gabriel Byrne is in it. And one of the things I like, too, is that we're getting Anne Pauliard. Do you guys remember who Anne Pauliard from? She was the original actress from Luc Besson's film La Femme Nikita, the original. Right. The original. So I'm really excited that we're going to get more of that. I'm excited for that.
Ballerina is just a different way of phrasing Black Widow.
Or Red Sparrow.
Right?
Yeah. Basically,
Russian ballerina spy.
Sure.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Right.
But it was already introduced to us in John Wick 3 when he cashes in the rosary beads to get safe passage to go where he needs to go,
I love the fact that you have Gabriel Byrne and Ian McShane in the same film, because that's the only person that you could make, like, you could add Checky Cario into it, and that would be like the trifecta of like that generation, that brand of acting, that charisma. That would be like the triumvirate for me.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. Is John Wick 2014. We're celebrating its 10th anniversary. I want to get your guys' final thoughts on this. Norm, I felt like you've been on the John Wick train with us for a while here, so I'm so happy that you wanted to come on and talk some John Wick, man. Give us your final thoughts on John Wick.
I mean, this is a great film, and this is one of those kind of films where I don't go to the theater a lot for personal reasons, and I don't really collect a lot of physical media for reasons, but I have collected a lot of John Wick stuff because I think it's a classic film. It's funny that we're putting it on Couch Potato Theater for being 10 years, but it is a classic film. It's the kind of film where you watch it and you're like, this is the reason why you watch movies, right? And it can end just the same as it would continue for 3 other sequels, and obviously a franchise of, whatever that's being built behind it. But it's kind of like this is the way I feel about a lot of these kind of like Star Wars. I love Empire Strikes Back. I love Jedi. I love some of the stuff that came out afterwards. I love Andor right now. But if it never continued, it is the perfect encapsulated movie of a story that needs to be told or was told. And I think that that's what this was. I think it's an action franchise that it became an action franchise accidentally. It's a great movie that has incredible quality and incredible production and a great story and a uniqueness to it that can't be helped, but kind of be encapsulated and turned into like a franchise for Hollywood. I'm not necessarily saying that as a compliment, to be honest with you. I like it when movies are unique, singular movies. I liked it when Highlander was just a singular movie before it got franchised out. Now, yes, I get great stuff out of it. TV series is what I love, but I don't know. It's like to me, it's just one of those rare, perfect things. And I wish it stayed rare and perfect, but that's my opinion of it. I don't necessarily want to see bigger, better, more when you've already reached perfection. So that's my take on it.
Gotcha. Lacey, what about you? What's your final thoughts on John Wick?
This is one of the few movies where when I watched it for the first time, I wanted all the prequels. I want to see Marcus. I want to see his,
Watch the Continental.
Right. Well, okay, so that's fair because I haven't seen the Continental, but I want to see Perkins. I want to see how she came to like where she's doing. I want to see the romantic. I want to see the drama. I want to see the romance film where he fell in love with his wife. I want to see that happen. I want to see the reasons he left the fold. I want to see before that. I want to see what he did in to what price.
Impossible Task, right? Yeah.
I want to see that Impossible Task. I want a film called Impossible Task. I want to see Aurelio. I want to see his whole world. I want to see everything that he's done. I want to see all that stuff. So this is one of the few films where every character is so, even the tiniest, 2 or 3 lines here or there, they're so well placed and well acted because I just really just enjoyed the casting in general. But I want to see all of the prequels. So while I haven't watched the Continental yet, I was under the impression that the Continental was Lance Reddick and Ian McShane's backstory. Is that not correct?
You do get younger versions of them, yes, but they are not. They are not in control of the Continental at the time.
Gotcha. Okay, but so Marcus is in it. That sounds great. I would love to see that. I'm totally down for that. So yeah, I'm very excited. I would.
Mel Gibson is in control, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Right on.
All right. Cool. Kyle, give me your final thoughts on John Wick.
So here's the thing with John Wick. It is, in my opinion, and I said it a little bit ago, it's a perfect film, and it's a perfect film for so many reasons. Even though it might not contain certain elements into it, but you've got a love story. You've got a man who's fighting the odds. He even though he's the badass, he's still an underdog because he's fighting the odds. You've got the evil mob henchman, and you've got the evil mob boss. You've got all these things working together. You throw in a totally new style of stunts and fighting that revolutionize it. I also look at the timing of when this film came out. This film comes out right as we're really starting to get into franchises, really taking over Hollywood. Marvel's really picking up steam. You have Fast and Furious out there. You have a lot of other things. So everybody was looking, how can we franchise this? How can we franchise this? Boom, boom, boom. This movie comes out in the 80s. Here's what you have. You have 18 different sequels direct to video. You do not have more. You maybe get one more sequel in the theaters, but you get a bunch of direct in the 80s and 90s. You get a bunch of direct to video sequels. John Wick comes out in 2020. There is so much streaming content out of the world of John Wick because Aurelio gets his own show. Some of these, Marcus gets his own show. That's how that goes. So John Wick is kind of in one of these aspects to where if it comes out at any other time, I think it goes in a totally different direction than what it has gone in. As I've said, I feel that the franchising of Wick has made it a little bigger than what it needed to be. There's some great ideas in each of those films, and Kevin is right. There's amazing scenes. There's great ideas that I think are worth exploring more. And that's one of my frustrations with the later sequels. There's some concepts I'd rather see them have taken a different direction and different characters I would have liked to have seen shown up again. Common is a great example. He would have been great to see return in one of the other two films.
Yeah, so he was great in the second one.
That was one of the things. But we're here to talk about the original John Wick, and in by itself, it is a true couch potato theater movie in the fact you can jump in at any time with it and be good. It is incredibly rewatchable. It is an iconic Hollywood-changing film, and it's going to be one of those films that's timeless because it's not. When you don't forget, outside of cell phones, it's not highly technology based. Mm-hmm. So it really becomes a movie that can be timeless. And that makes it even one of the reasons why that works too. 50 years from now, you could go back and watch John Wick, know what changed in Hollywood, and still feel like, okay, yeah, this kind of can fit in just about any time, unless we're to the point where we're at flying cars and living on the moon. I mean, but still, that's what it's John Wick. There's so many things that make it work. It's a perfect film. It's an amazing Keanu Reeves performance, and it's also, truthfully, one of the most intense villains we've had in a film in a very long time. And it combines all those things. and it launched so many careers or rebirthed so many careers from it and changed so many styles. It's going to be an all-timer in Hollywood history for its importance of what it did for the action film genre.
I think the underworld that is the high table and all of the people that we see behind the scenes working on old computers that aren't as easily tracked. I feel like the underworld has kept flip phones alive, because they're not as hard to track. You guys have all said it best, and you alluded to it earlier, Lacey and Kyle. You just said it, and I didn't really think about it until now, but I was having a conversation about, and we've had this as a topic on Culture Clash, Kyle. What is a perfect film? What is your perfect film? And my short list is Raiders of the Lost Ark, Galaxy Quest, and Princess Bride, and now is John Wick, the original one. These are perfect. This is a perfect film for me, and you guys have eloquently said and backed up my argument just now. I love this film, and it was nice to be in on it when it first happened, and tell people about it, and learn about it, and share our John Wick nerdiness with, of course, here the Fandom Podcast Network, and absolutely adore this film. It's one of the best out there. So can't believe it's celebrating its 10th anniversary. Yeah, Kyle.
I just wanted to ask you one last time, Kevin, who saved John Wick?
I felt I did, but apparently I didn't have the $6 million, so we're going to give it to Evil Encore. All right, guys, this is the Fandom Podcast Network. We've just recently, of course, jumped on Blue Sky as well. Norm, how can we find you?
Well, you can find me as one of the two co-hosts of the podcast Mission Log on the Roddenberry Podcast Network, and that is the podcast where we talk about every single episode and every single movie of Star Trek in broadcast release order. And right now we're in the almost middle of season 6 of Star Trek Voyager. So,
all right.
Yep.
Yeah. So they had the Delta Flyer by then, right? I love the Delta Flyer.
The Delta Flyer is there. Sound of Nine is there. There's a lot of interesting things going on with Voyager right now.
Okay. So. Yeah, tune in. It's like the premier Star Trek podcast. It's freaking awesome. So check it out.
Thank you.
Nice.
Lacey, how can we find you?
I'm in all the places. Lacey Pants at all the places except for Instagram, where I'm the Lacey Pants. That's Blue Sky. That's Letterboxd. That's Discord. That's all the places. Facebook. Yeah.
Awesome. Kyle, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me publishing and putting out podcasts right before we record this podcast, but you can find me all over the place on the Fandom Podcast Network, whether it's our Facebook page, any of our group pages, including Union Federation and True Believers, all those great pages. You can find me individually on Facebook, Kyle Wagner. You can find me on X at AKyleW. You can find me on Blue Sky at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom.
My name is Kevin. You can find me, Kevin Reitzel, on Facebook. Of course, you can find me on all the socials at Spartan_Phoenix, and now recently on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. Fandom Podcast Network is on YouTube, Facebook. Please search for Fandom Podcast Network. Give us a subscribe and a share and a like. We appreciate that. And also give a shout out to us on TeePublic. Search Fandom Podcast Network. We got some great t-shirts with all of our show logos on there as well. So give us some love there. This is John Wick, guys, 10th anniversary. Norman, thank you so much for coming on for this, man. This was great to have you on board.
Everybody gets a coin tonight.
Yay! Wait, how big is it? Is it reservation for 4 then?
Dinner reservations for 3.
All right, Lacey, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll be back. Kyle, thank you again as always. Appreciate the work that you do. Appreciate it.
It's always good. I just want to say we are joined by one of the Fandom Podcast Network mascot cats here, Stripesy. If anything ever happens to this cat, we think what John Wick did was crazy. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Thank you guys again for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network for John Wick 2014, celebrating its 10th anniversary, guys. All right, guys, until next time, we will see you on the couch. Goodbye, everybody.